Good morning. Nice of you guys to drop by.
What a piece of junk.
What are you talking about?
Don't be too proud of this technological terror you've constructed.
Look, don't worry. Everything's gonna be fine. Trust me.
I don't know what all this trouble is about, but I'm sure it must be your fault. Don't get technical with me.
This bickering is pointless.
Don't everybody thank me at once.
I don't know where you get your delusions, laser brain.
I'm glad you're here to tell us these things.
How could you even say that?
I got a bad feeling about this.
Well, come on. Everything's perfectly all right now. We're fine. We're all fine here now. Thank you. How are you?
Would you get going, you pirate?
Get in there, you big furry-o! I don't care what you smell!
I'm getting too old for this sort of thing.
If what you've told me is true, you will have gained my trust.
I like the sound of that.
Get a shuttle ready.
I don't know. Fly casual.
Shuttle Tydirium, what is your cargo and destination?
Transmission commencing.
Good evening, everybody. This is the Shuttle Tydirium podcast, the mothership of casual X-Wing gameplay. I am your host, Captain Jim Chadwick, also known as Hey Chadwick on the forums. I do have sitting next to me my co-pilot, Phil Mead. How you doing, Phil?
I'm doing well. Now, as part of our continuing Life Day observance, today we're going to be remembering the departed. This is also a very big part of Life Day, is to remember those in your life who are no longer with you. For us, this is mostly Arthur Astromech. Arthur Astromech, who was with us just a short time, but made a lasting impression, especially, and really lives on in J-Bot, literally. Is in there.
What about our Ewok?
And yes, many Ewoks have given their lives for the ship.
It was a Tiki Tiki. He actually lasted about 6 months. He was a long timer.
Yeah, he was very good at avoiding J-Bot, I think.
For a while.
The Ewoks have done a wonderful job of keeping the machine well oiled. Wink, wink.
They've also done a great job of keeping one protocol droid entertained.
Yes, and I will say, should we introduce, could be the star of the show, J-Bot. He is our cranky protocol droid. How you doing, J-Bot?
I'm doing okay. Like to see, droid kind being brought back to the forefront here in recent days. So it's always brings a smile to my face.
And we do have Jake the Break, our chief engineer. Jake, it's so good to have you on board.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be here. I'm stoked. I'm happy. I'm pumped. I'm just really excited about today's content.
Yes, I think we're alike. I find that more I talk to you, Jake, the more we're on the same page on so many things. Like, you like Nightcrawler from the X-Men,
Yes.
etc. Just like, I find that I agree with you more often than not. But let me first, before we get into the captain's question, I do want to give a shout out to the Hit Crit podcast in South Africa. I've been chatting with those guys. I like the show. It's funny. And they're hoping to get into some casual and tournament play in South Africa. So I was pretty excited about that. But shout out, hey guys, how you doing? All right, so my captain's question is going to be about Rogue One, a big surprise.
Wait. You should warn everybody before we go any further that things may be given away that are in the movie.
This is a spoiler alert. This entire podcast is a spoiler alert. If you have not seen Rogue One, do not listen to this podcast unless you want to be spoiled.
Save it for after. Have it ready to go. So as soon as you leave that movie theater, you get in your car, you've got this podcast ready to roll, and you'll be much happier for it.
Spoiler alert, yes. Oh, and I did forget. For Phil, for you, for Life Day, I know I celebrate Sithmas, you celebrate Life Day, but I actually posted to the Facebook group a video of Chewbacca singing Silent Night.
Oh, yes.
That was for you, Phil. That was my Life Day present to you.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right. So the captain's question, with full spoiler alerts going on, who is your favorite character from Rogue One? And Phil, I'll go to you.
I liked Two Tubes. You guys know Two Tubes?
Who?
Two Tubes.
Two Tubes. He was Saw Gerrera's second in command. He's the guy he's like alien dude with like tubes coming out of his face. And he spoke in the I think he was speaking in Huttese.
So wait, you can actually tell.
You know,
you can start to tell alien languages in Star Wars.
Yeah, it's not like they have that many. I mean,
yeah, they don't have that many, and they don't have very many words actually. Most of them. They just have a lot of subtitle, so it's kind of a contextual word usage, I believe.
All right.
That's a cool character choice because I completely forgot about him, but he was such a cool looking character, and also he kind of gave a lot of life to that alien kind of creature, even though he didn't say a single word of English. Yeah, very good choice.
I thought he was a jerk. I didn't like him.
Yeah, he was a jerk. I mean,
he was definitely
very protective of his own guys. He's not.
Yeah, he had his character down pat. It seemed like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's good that they were able to, he was able to bring that life and his character to life through the alien skin. So that was good. Mm-hmm. Alien mask and all that. All right. So Two Tubes is your favorite one, really?
He went off the board, folks.
I like it.
All right. So, J-Bot, I'm gonna go to you next, or should I go to Jake?
You can go to Jake. Jake will be fine.
All right, Jake.
All right. I'm going to intentionally choose J-Bots. No. No, I won't.
It's impossible.
Impossible. Okay. So, so many lovable characters. Really just, it's so hard to pick one. I want to give just an honorable mention first, which was to all the stormtroopers in the film. Honorable mention to all of you. I loved you all. I thought you guys were awesome. I loved your lines. Basically, hearing you speak was so great. I feel like we've played so many games and seen so many movies with like the troopers that are just like nameless, faceless, not speaking. And in this movie, it really felt like you got some depth and you got some individuality in all these characters. It was just really cool to see the stormtroopers. It wasn't as cool to see them all dying, but hey, Star Wars movie without stormtroopers dying, I wouldn't know what to do with it.
Right, I mean, like one guy he exploded and blew to the left, one guy blew to the right.
Yes,
one guy was shot in the head.
Yep, one got stabbed in the foot with a stick. I mean, it's just so many variations.
They had so much personality.
Yes, so that was my kind of runners-up consolation prize. I tip my hat to you, stormtroopers. My favorite character in this movie was Darth Vader. And I know that might seem like an obvious choice, or maybe not an obvious choice because there were so many other good choices out there. But really, I feel like this was the Darth Vader that I've been waiting for. This is not just, Darth Vader going after a main character like Luke Skywalker, trying to find him, or like freezing Han Solo in carbonite, or, battling in front of Palpatine. This was like a great rendition of him. This is like kind of the Darth Vader that I know from the Darth Vader comic books.
Okay, this is Darth Vader gone wild.
He had beads all over his neck, no more chains. He just had Mardi Gras beads everywhere. And he went wild. I loved him. So he was my top choice.
Yeah, it's hard for me to complain about that one, the way they portrayed him. I mentioned to one of the guys at the game store tonight, I said that growing up I watched 4, 5, and 6 and never really felt kind of the menace that Darth Vader was supposed to kind of instill, this kind of fear that people around the galaxy had of the character. Like they always talked about it, but you never really got it in the movie.
Exactly, yeah.
But obviously, jumping way far ahead in the movie, the scene of where he finally kind of uses a lightsaber. It's the first time in the whole movie, you might not even thought about this, the first time in the whole movie you actually see someone like turn on a flashlight. And I'm like, holy crap, I call them flashlight witters. I'm not a big Jedi fan. So like, you're like, oh, wait a minute, I haven't seen one of these in the movie yet. Holy crap. And it makes that stark contrast to the rest of the film of like, oh, wait a minute. Beautiful
contrast.
Yeah, this guy, wait a minute, this guy doesn't fit with the rest of this. What just happened? And then I was telling Jim, I said, some of the stuff might have been missed if you're just watching the big flashy stuff on screen, but the essentially like force choke to the ceiling, and then as I walk by, casually like cut the dude essentially in half as you kind of casually walk by.
It was
I was
so.
like, I jaw dropped. I was like, oh, that's what Vader's supposed. And the people, like the pure terror on the faces of the Republic guy, or I guess the rebel troopers, is like, okay, that makes sense. Now I kind of get it. If this was how he was in 4, 5, and 6, yeah.
Terror was like a light word for what these guys. This was just like crawling for your death. Like you're dying no matter what you do. The absolute menace and power that he had, and the greatest thing, which you kind of already touched upon, was he wasn't even exerting himself.
No,
And when we were watching it, we were kind of watching it from the rebels' perspective, like in that corridor. And he was just coming down, and he wasn't breaking a sweat. He was just doing his thing, force move here, saber slice there, force pull, force choke, force push. It was just, and these guys had through everything they could, and it was nothing. It was absolutely fantastic.
So I do have to say, I can't remember where I heard this from at all, but they wanted to make that even nastier, but they were worried about getting bumped to a different rating level. Like they wanted to keep it accessible. So they actually wanted to make Darth Vader even more brutal, even scarier. I'm like, what could they do?
And I was when you mentioned that, I wasn't sure like what could they have done, because in episode 2 the Anakin character just decapitates a Tusken as he comes out of a tent. And like, wait a minute.
Yeah, but you can't see a Tusken's human face.
Oh, okay.
That's the thing.
They could have popped a head or something, like a grape. He could have forced them.
He could have like boiled their brains inside their skull and watched their blood ooze out their eyes.
Yeah,
don't get me wrong.
There's
They could
definitely
have gone
things you could do.
extreme levels, but like, I guess I couldn't see any person that wrote the rest of this movie writing that much kind of true like violence into it, because it would have been massively like away from the rest of the movie.
Sure. But I mean, when it comes right down to it, I think that scene in my mind is just perfect. I mean, it was the perfect level of violence with the perfect level of force, with the perfect level of shock and awe. And I wouldn't touch it. I think they did a great job with it.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so J-Bot, what about your favorite character?
Well, I think I feel like mine's the obvious character, because everything I've seen after it is everybody's favorite character. Like, oh, this guy stole the movie.
Can I guess?
Yeah, go ahead. Feel free.
K2SO?
Yeah. How did you know?
You robot kind. We don't serve your kind here. You all stick.
Okay, there's 2 points. I told Jim at the store today, I said, I feel like it's pretty obvious who they modeled the attitude of this character on, because they were still rewriting and reshooting things up until, not very long ago. And our show's been out for 7 months. I think it's easily possible somebody caught wind, like, you know what, that character, he really does need a little bit more attitude. And I told Jim, I said, okay, number one, if you're out there, which one of you, send us an email. We won't give your name away. Who's the fan of X-Wing that listens to the podcast that's also on the writing directing team? Number one. Number two, just give us a nod. We won't tell anybody. We'll just take it in pride for ourselves. Number three, why didn't you call me and ask me to come on to just be an extra in the film? You could have had the whole team, but I told Jim I would have happily been Red 5 in this movie. Just been the, like, you were in the movie. Yeah, I was one that I said from the very first episode, all I want to do is go, oh, I'm hit, lean forward, explosion. So that would have been happy. And apparently you didn't hear the first couple episodes, so just go back and re-listen to them, and then when you come out with the next movie, just remember me.
Well, I mean, it may seem curious to the normal person, but I mean, you remember a couple months ago when we had that Imperial probe droid flying around the ship for a couple weeks, and it only followed J-Bot around. It was recording. Yeah. It was recording all of your antics, and I think it sent it to Hollywood there.
But honestly, I guess kind of from the first scene that he's brought into it, where he basically either choke slams or clotheslines.
Great introduction to the character.
Her into the ground, like, we're here to rescue you, or this is a rescue.
Like, sit back and relax.
You are being rescued.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
She's winded on the ground. Yeah.
Right. But honestly, my favorite it's very early as well, when they're in the that was the U-wing, I think, when they were first getting into it. And he's like, why does she get a blaster? I'm gonna like this character. As soon as I heard that, I'm like, I'm gonna like this character. And I thought it told a really interesting story with just that one character. You got to see the kind of little bit of character growth, and obviously he was there for humor, but it wasn't like Jar Jar humor. It was
Absolutely.
It was just the whole. He doesn't have a filter.
Right.
He just says whatever comes into his head.
I love when he slaps Captain Andor when they're pretending that he's that Andor is his prisoner.
Right.
He's just like,
and Andor tries to say
there's
something.
another one
back
for your
to the face.
There's a fresh one if your mouth off again.
Yeah, and honestly, the ending of it, obviously him sacrificing himself, but them when they gave him the blaster, I'm like, oh, that's so cool. I wonder if he'll even use it. And of course, like when he does, he's just like beep beep beep. You're like, what did you say? Somebody called it, Jim? It was essentially like, no, it was something else.
Oh no, it was somebody else. But that whole video that I have to say, Phil posted a video of Ariel Knott's where it's Kylo Ren reviewing Rogue One, which is hysterical. It's like 9 minutes long. He posted the Facebook group. If you're not in the Facebook group and you hate Facebook and you're paranoid, it's okay. Just like Google Kylo Ren reviews Rogue One. It was very funny. But
it was funny to me, and I'm unfortunately going to have to go back and watch the movie a few more times. But I want to know, and somebody will do this. It always happens on YouTube. How many stormtroopers he kills before the end of that scene? Because in my mind, it was like, did he kill like 40 or 50 of these stormtroopers before they finally got him? Because he's just nonchalantly like throwing a grenade, boop, and oh look, bing, 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 bing. There goes 4 or 5 more guys. I'm like, wow, how many are they letting this robot kill? Because this is like that's a J-bot death, woohoo! Like that's how he should be. The Butch Cassidy Sundance Kid just pew 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 pew. The end of what was it? Young Guns for the end of that movie, it was just a giant shooter. I'm like, that's how it should be, yay!
I thought it was hysterical that Kylo Ren said that. Of course, they have to succeed only with using Imperial technology.
Yeah, that was nice.
Yeah, that was pretty.
So
cool.
That's obviously my favorite characters. It was just it fit. I think anybody who watched it was like, yeah, J-Bot's gonna love that character. But I've seen a lot of people talking about the movie who are like, that character essentially stole it. Like, this character stole the movie, which I don't know if that's true. There's a lot of great characters in it.
It's true.
Yeah,
but
he has a lot of the humor in the movie.
He has a lot of the humor, and also, I don't know about you guys, but when I was looking at the trailers, I saw him and I was just like, I really wanted to like an Imperial reprogrammed droid, but this is just going to be like a C-3PO novelty. It's going to be kind of stinky, kind of lame jokes and whatever. I couldn't believe how much I ended up liking him, and it was right around what you said, like, first when he clotheslined her, and that was awesome. And then when he said, "You gave her a blaster," it was just like, "Oh man, this character is awesome."
And he's so happy. He's so happy when he finally gets a blaster.
Yeah.
Oh, so
he's so happy.
That I was watching as I'm watching the movie. I'm like, that's exactly what I would have done. Like, where she hands him the bag to carry back to the spaceship. Just
drops it on the ground.
I'm like, forget it.
I'm sitting smiling like,
this is BS.
Like, why? Who was following me? Where's the camera at? That like knows exactly what I would have done in these instances.
It was the probe droid. I told you, the probe droid followed you.
So yeah, obvious. It felt like an obvious one. My runner-up, and this is going to come from a little bit out of left field, is actually the Baze Malbus character, who gets really underplayed in the movie. Like, he doesn't get a ton of lines. He just kind of almost feels there as a supporting character to the Imwe character.
Wait, is that Forrest Whitaker?
No. It's Admiral Aimbot.
Okay.
Yeah. I like him because he has very much of a feel of Old Republic stuff about him. I know I mentioned this to Jim. I saw somebody saying, "Oh, he's kind of like a Boba Fett." I'm like, no. He like Boba Fett just happens to wear an armor type that's relatively common if you get outside of the mainstream of Stormtrooper stuff. And the Baze character just happens to be wearing something relatively similar to it as well. And it's hard for me not to like that kind of, in a sense, like mercenary. He's not a mercenary, obviously, but a mercenary style individual who's got more of a unique kind of armor feel than just a faceless stormtrooper.
Yeah,
he's a very like Ronin type feel, I don't know, warrior.
Yeah,
lone warrior.
Do we want to talk about the Admiral Aimbot comment? Because
who's your favorite character, Jim?
Yeah, we got to go to you first.
All right, so we're not going to talk about that guy and what Kylo Ren reviewed that was hysterical.
Well, I think we should return. I think there's so much content.
All right.
We're gonna get trapped here in the captain's question for the whole episode.
So to me, my favorite character returned to the silver screen from Star Wars, the whole Star Wars movie or series. I love Grand Moff Tarkin.
Yay!
Like, he is my favorite. I love Grand Moff Tarkin. He's just so evil. I read the Tarkin book. I just like Grand Moff Tarkin. I think the actor is awesome. He's just so sinister, and I love it. And I've heard many complaints about the Grand Moff Tarkin CGI, etc. Maybe people say he had too much screen time because it was not quite there yet. But I know it was somebody on Facebook. It was either a friend or someone on the Shuttle Tydirium Facebook page. I can't remember. Who said that their wife didn't know it was actually CGI.
Yeah, that's what
There's
I was
a lot
wondering.
of people. A lot of people that didn't realize who he was, didn't even realize it. I've been reading this over and over again.
Yeah.
And some people said, "Oh, my kids, they're 6 years old. They recognize that he wasn't real." But
but the kids these days are grown up on CGI. I mean, they can probably pick it out of a lineup.
Yeah, they come out of the womb with like an iPhone in their hand.
Yes, they do.
It's very. It's not the latest model, but
it's 9 months outdated.
I will say that when he first comes on screen, obviously you see him from behind. Now, let me remind you, I know nothing other than the very first trailer. I didn't watch any follow-up trailers, didn't watch any, this might happen sort of stuff. I knew I was going to see it, didn't want to be spoiled in any way, shape, or form, which is funny. We'll get to the reason I think it was funny way down the line. But when he first comes on screen, you just see the back of his head. And I'm like, maybe they'll stick with the whole kind of image in the kind of view screen image in the glass,
the reflection,
right? And it's like they'll never show him. He'll just be the kind of, you'll see the back of the character. You'll get a couple scenes like that, and then that'll be it. When he turns around, now obviously I know it's CGI. I mean that's pretty much
because we know he's dead.
Yeah, because we know he's dead.
Yeah.
It for like probably the first minute. Like, I was obviously like, oh my God, they actually turned around. Holy crap. Oh, wow. He looks really like him. Mm-hmm. They've done a really good job of the CGI, but that was what was going through my head was, wow, they did a really good job of the CGI, not kind of a pure acceptance of the character. Does that make sense? Like, in a sense, it pulled me out of the story long enough for me to acknowledge that it was CGI versus like, hey, look, one of an at ACT, which is, come on, it's an at. Right. Like it walking through, I know CGI didn't make me think, God, it's a really good job of CGI.
Yep.
Does that make sense? Like his face, for the first minute, like ripped me out of the story to like, God, I did it's just come a long way since Tintin. Now that's where literally the faces to me look like Tintin. If y'all have ever seen that movie, which I think is great. Like it felt like that. And then by the time he'd been on screen for like 4 or 5 minutes, didn't notice it at all anymore.
Yes.
And to me, I think that's what people might be gripping on to is, it was horrible CGI. It's like it in a sense it was for that first minute. Yep. But then once you get used to it, you're like, oh, okay, I'm past that. Now I'm back to the story.
I reveled in every moment of Tarkin on the screen. I love Tarkin.
Oh no, it was great.
I mean, he's so cool. He is Vader's boss.
Yeah, he's like second in command of the Empire.
The thing that got me was the actor essentially portraying that character did the voice. It wasn't some modulated like replay of Tarkin's voice from 4-5 or 4. It was the actual actor did the voice.
Right.
But he's dead.
No, not Tarkin. Not
Tarkin.
The dude whose face got CG'd over.
Yeah, the guy whose face got CGI'd over was the actual voice. It wasn't like I said, a modulated kind of weird computerized copy from the past. It was that guy spent time to get the mannerisms, get the pattern of speech like into his voice.
Yeah.
Which I thought was great. Because that I did not notice. I was like, holy
Didn't notice
crap.
His voice was different at all.
Yeah, the
voice
was perfect to me. I was like, I need to go back and watch 4 again to say like, okay, maybe it was a pitch off here, a pitch off there, but in general, the voice was perfect to me, and that's what kind of pulled me back in. So the face was, and then the voice was so perfect, like you said, that kind of barely contained terror that's behind the character.
So to be, I love Grand Moff Tarkin. I mean, he is someone who actually is not force anything, and he is Vader's boss. He's like that efficient and cool and thorough. And I like what he did in Star Wars Rebels. I like what he did in the Clone Wars. And I might have told the story, but when I worked at IBM and instant messaging became a new thing, you could actually upload your picture to the corporate directory, and then it would kind of show up as your picture. People I knew did a whole bunch of funny ones like Homer Simpson, etc. And I picked Grand Moff Tarkin actually as my profile pic for the corporate directory until one person asked me why I had a Nazi. And I was like, because I thought IBM, it's a pretty nerd company, but it was someone who, a youngish female, and she, I guess, wasn't into Star Wars and didn't get it and thought it was Nazi. And I was like, I had to change this immediately. I was like,
that's so funny.
Yeah, I can understand.
I had to change it. But I love Tarkin, and so if I had to pick, and so even just all of his bit, even the CGI and everything, I know some people have problems with. I didn't. I loved it. I thought it was awesome. It was great. I reveled. It was one of my laugh out loud moments. I forget what it was, but some line he said that just made me just go, ha! Out. So it was excellent.
And you know what? I do have to say, just in general, a tip of the hat to the movie for having the courage to do that, which is to say, not just have a scene where you're looking at his back and you see a reflection in the window,
right.
To actually say, you know what, guys, we love this character, we want him in the movie, we know our technology is going to have a little bit of that. Yeah, there's the uncanny valley, of course, and there's some people that are going to pick up immediately. And J-Bot, you're absolutely right. You get pulled out for a minute just to say, wow. But then, you know what? You accept it. I completely accepted it, just like you guys said. I thought they did a brilliant job.
All right. And if I did have to pick another character that was like maybe new to Rogue One, just as a kind of like a second runner-up or whatnot, I would pick Bodhi. Bodhi Rook, the Imperial pilot.
Oh, yes.
I liked Bodhi. I thought he was awesome. I thought he was pretty good. I liked Bodhi a lot.
He did remind me so much of an Imperial pilot, but I liked his character a ton.
Yeah, he was a nice guy. And then,
even what he figured the name out, to be honest with you.
Oh, he was the U-wing, the Imperial pilot.
Yeah, I got the pilot part, but that's all I could remember. The pilot, because that's all he kept saying. I'm the pilot. Yeah. I'm the pilot. So that's all I could remember. Yeah. He never really, at least I don't recall hearing his name in it. I only remember them calling him the pilot.
And he is one of the U-wing pilots. So what is it? When a friendly ship acquires a target lock, that ship can lock onto an enemy ship at range 1 to 3 of any friendly ship.
Right.
So he's the one who boosts all that because he's a team player. Because he's from the Empire. All right. So that's the captain's question. So we've covered several things already so far. And yeah, I know we're probably gonna run late tonight, which is good because we have holiday. J-Bot doesn't have a shift in the morning, so he's borrowed Gonk Droid. He might actually have battery power for a long time.
Oh, is that why the carcass is here on the ground? Oh, geez.
Oh, speaking of Gonk, if anybody wants to see my silly mini story with Gonk, I'll have to find that thread. That's a post in the Facebook page of a spoof poster for Star Wars. I don't know if everybody saw this, but it just had the Gonk droid on it. And it said something along the lines of he's a robot that only powers things up, something like that. But you're going to go see the movie anyway because it's a Star Wars movie. So I wrote like a quick 2-paragraph, like, I have to write this story. It's so perfect. And wrote like a 2-paragraph deal on it that I thought was pretty funny, but apparently no one else read it, unfortunately.
I did. It was hysterical. And you know what? I think it's probably like our 5th time mentioning the Facebook page, and we're really not concerning. We did make a comment to say, let's mention the Facebook page as much as possible to get people to join. We really aren't. It's just kind of come up that we communicate with everybody a bunch off of it, and it's pretty funny.
Yeah, just an accumulation of all of our random musings is really what it's become.
Mm-hmm. A lot of good stuff, a lot of funny stuff that entertains me. But yeah. I'm not trying to. We're not all conspiring to say, let's mention the Facebook page as much as possible. But all right. So, do we want to talk about other CGI? Because I know some people had a problem with. They say CGI. I don't know the exact moment, and it was basically one of the Star Destroyers when they're doing the shot with you kind of see in the commercial or the trailer.
The establishing shot for the Death Star. Yeah, it's on my notes.
Death Star getting the disc put in. But it's like, so there's a Imperial Star Destroyer that's very, very bright because it's in the light of it's a very dramatic moment with a very high contrast, light and dark, and etc.
Yeah.
And wait, can you just tell me is there some kind of a critique about that?
Yes, people are like, ew, it looked like a model. It looked like it was fake.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Can I just stomp this out right now? Yes, you're absolutely right about the contrast, but also one of the best parts about this movie, and I think, was that it really did take you back to the original trilogy, where you think about A New Hope, episode 4, where you've got that Star Destroyer right over the screen following, the blockade runner, right? And it's bright white. It's it's a contrast, a shining bright light right against the suns of Tatooine. I thought these Star Destroyers looked just like that, except they're obviously CGI because of the awesomeness that we saw in the later scenes. But oh man, no. I don't think there should be any complaints.
There are dissident rebel groups out there, insurgents who want to smash that. They complain about that Imperial Star Destroyer shot.
J-Bot.
They're not happy with it.
J-Bot.
Everybody's pointing to me.
J-Bot, get me. No. I'm just saying, J-Bot, get your blaster. Meet me in the hangar deck, and we got to go and find some insurgents real quick.
Okay, so maybe this is a time. I did make some notes. I lost one of my notepads of things that kind of
in the theater.
No, that would actually there were times in there where I'm like, I need a notepad badly, or I'm going to forget this moment, and I have. There's a crap ton of stuff. But I basically walked out to my car and started scribbling notes down, and I can't find one of the notepads because I wanted it fresh. I mean, I saw it 2 days ago, so I wanted it fresh in my head, like all the stuff. Let me start by saying I loved the movie, absolutely loved the movie, but I don't think it was perfect. And
shut your mouth.
Not that any movie can ever be perfect. That's the thing you need to understand. I'm not going to say that I could have made it perfect, but I think there are some things that can be nitpicked about it. And it wouldn't be Star Wars if we didn't have some things to complain about. I mean, come on. If we all loved all this stuff, there'd be no war involved. It'd just be stars.
I know we agreed to take off the restraining bolt for this episode, but I think we should maybe put it back on because I don't like this kind of talk.
This is against
my movie.
Free speech is against Imperial regulation, as you know.
We have First Amendment zones that are outside the shuttle.
I can survive in space. I know the shot you're talking about. I didn't see it until the movie, just so you know. And I know it was in a lot of the trailers. I didn't.
No, actually, that particular moment wasn't. It was like the moment where they just were putting the disc in, and that was it. But like right after that, they kind of had an Imperial Star Destroyer cruising past in the bright beam.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff I've seen, or at least the one I was thinking of, was because it is that kind of establishing shot of, hey, we've now moved to outside the Death Star as it's kind of getting its final pieces put in place. And there is a very obvious like Star Destroyer where, and the reason I didn't like it, I not so much hated it, but like it didn't make sense to me, was did it just crest the horizon and get the sun on it all of a sudden? Because
yes,
it's either in the sun or not, and it wasn't like streaking across the sky. So how did it suddenly go like really quick?
It was the giant disc and the sun coming around the planet that hit it just right. It was.
Also, it's hard to tell how fast it was actually going.
Right? Yeah, no, I get that, but it's still like it felt like it moved too quickly, I guess is what my complaint. I know this, like I said, these are nitpicks. These are not like me completely destroying the movie. It felt off is the easiest way I can put that. It's like something doesn't feel right about how the light moved across it. I know it's CGI. Don't care. That didn't do anything to me. It just felt weird with the lighting.
No, it was part of the whole disc and stuff was covering the sun or the star, and when that moved out of the way, then allowed the light to go through.
Except for the light was coming from the opposite side where the Death Star was. So
no, but the disc was getting put in.
You know, Jim, what I'm saying is, without going into detail, the disc looked like on screen was about an inch away from being placed as the Star was coming in. It wasn't like floating off in space somewhere and being pulled in from miles away.
Then it was the lighting. Then it was the eclipse of the planet. Obviously, the moon or planet that it was around. Obviously,
you're doing a lot of swimming to try and explain it. To me, the lighting felt wrong.
I don't think so.
It's okay if it's like, hey, look, let's show the light cresting the horizon and finally hit, But what I'm saying is it felt off. And that's what I'm trying to get to. There's a lot of little things in the movie that dragged me out of it. And that's where, I guess, I hate to call them complaints. The concerns is probably the better way to put it. Because things like that pulled me out. The first time seeing Tarkin, I was okay after that, but
that I can understand.
Tarkin pulled me out.
That.
But that's understandable. I think they did that on purpose. That's why he had his back to you. He didn't walk up to him with him. The camera didn't kind of walk with the characters up to him, so you saw him from a distance. He turned around. It was meant to be this kind of, are we going to really see his face? And then when he turns around, like, it's meant to be a shock. The directors, they meant to do that. Just same thing they did with Leia at the end of it. It's meant to be a shock. You're like, are they ever going to show her face? And I'm like, of course they are. They showed Tarkin's. And that one was jarring too. But
which, by the way, just a quick aside, you know what? How you just said, they have Leia at the end. Right. I don't know about you guys, but for me, I was almost completely tricked that entire time. I thought they somehow de-aged Carrie Fisher and put her in the movie. I did not realize that was CG until her mouth moved and like she said her line, and then I was like, "Oh my god, that's CG." I thought they found like a lookalike actor.
Yeah, and they actually, if you look at the actress, is really similar.
Yeah,
the mouths always give it away.
Yes,
if you've ever seen this sort of thing, the mouths always give it away. That's why that scene could have easily been accomplished without her saying a word.
Yes,
and it would have had just as much of an impact, probably more, because it would have dragged you out of
even
it
more.
for that moment.
Yeah,
I was okay with it because I saw what they were going for, so I was okay with those.
Yeah,
but there are other little things like that kind of dragged me out. And no complaint really about the Star Destroyer is CGI. I don't care. If it was a model kit, I wouldn't care. I mean, it's space, it's science fiction. If you're going into this expecting them to go into space and shoot an actual Star Destroyer floating around, you've got bigger problems than the CGI in a movie to concern yourself with. But so I go into these expecting special effects, expecting that stuff. It's when things like that jar me that like I said, the lighting just felt really weird. It felt like it was purposefully like, let's do this really quick to kind of show this and then move on to something else. And it's like, you didn't need to. You really didn't need to at all. Like, it was, and there's a lot of stuff that's in the movie that is there for fan service, that irked me on a lot of levels. And they're cool things.
Irked you?
Irked. IRKED.
No. I get irked, but I know we talked before about fan service, and I thought that you liked all.
No, I like some of the fan service. I like some of it went too far. It's like when they put I cannot think of their two names. The two thugs from the canteen on Tatooine, when they put them on Jeddah, essentially a day before not the planet, but at least the
Dr.
area that
they're in. And his friend the Walrus.
Right. If I know absolutely nothing about the surrounding universe, if I only know the movies, and this is what I was getting to, if I only know the movies and I know that I'm supposed to recognize those guys, and I'm going to see them in a few hours in a sense if I go back to back watching them, how the hell did they get from a planet essentially that was just destroyed to another one? Like, what were they
were just leaving.
Were they just leaving and heading towards the thing? Because there's nothing to imply that they were doing that.
People move quickly in the Star Wars universe. I mean,
it's true because you can go zip. I mean, how long does it take you to?
Well, here's what I'll say about that. In J-Bot's defense, I'm actually with you on that. What did you call it? The fan
service.
Fan service. So I agree. I think that you're right about that. There were several instances of that in this movie, and I'm sure you've probably picked up on them all. But having said that, I also agree with I guess Phil too, which is that I think it's well within reason that they were able to get off of that planet very quickly. They might have been on their way off it anyway, but also there was a good span of time between the time that the Death Star actually shot and they bumped into each other. Like, they bumped into each other right when they got onto the planet, and then they had that whole fight scene, and then they got captured and they got brought to the warlord's base, and then there was just so much time. The Star Destroyer left, and then had time to get off. So
yeah, and then how long were R2 and C-3PO in the Jawas thing? We don't really know.
Yeah, I feel like time lapse wise, I'm okay with that. But you're right as far as the fan service. It's like, yeah, was that necessary? No, that was just for like a Star Wars fan to be like, oh my god, I know who that is, and tell their person
I'm
next to
okay
them.
with it in general, like, and I certainly understand that. Oh, it's space; they could hop away, pretty quick. But it was more of a why. Like, what was the purpose of it? And
it was neat. I liked it.
No, it was neat, and that's fine. But like, are you you're essentially putting stuff in your movie just to be neat instead of like give them a purpose there. So I went online purposely after, like, I need to find out what the heck these two guys are doing there. And there's this huge backstory for why they're there, and that's great, which gives these characters these huge depths, like all this information that you never would have known from any of the movies. So if I go in just watching the movie, I'm thinking you added these guys just to pop a crowd, to use a wrestling term. You got them just there for somebody to go, ooh, like that was it. So why? I get it, but like there's so much other great fan service in this movie that you didn't necessarily even know was there, but because it would just kind of flew by you.
I like the lower key fan service too.
Right, that's the stuff I love, like the use of the Hammerhead Corvettes, for example. Like,
yeah, it's fantastic.
Having the ghost in several shots.
Having the ghost, it was amazing.
Well, there's enough Rebel stuff. We can go on about the Rebel stuff in just a second, but let J-Bob finish.
Yeah, that sort of stuff I'm perfectly okay with. There's pushback, really, if you include the Corvette itself, pushback all the way to Knights of the Old Republic stuff. And that's stuff that I noticed, and I loved it. I'm like, God, it's so cool, because they didn't, like, in a sense, beat it into your head like they did with those two characters on Jeddah. It's like, if those guys are walking by the screen and never bump into her, and you just see them go by, and like 99%, like, okay, now I get it. The story, their backstory stays the same. Everything is great, and only the people who are like deep into the fandom would have noticed those guys more than likely, or been like, hey, those kind of remind me of somebody else, instead of, in a sense, having them reprise their role from the next, from the sequels to Rogue One, and it just having them in the background, like the ghost in the background, having
I liked
all that stuff.
Kylo Ren's comments on those guys. Hey, Craig, maybe you haven't seen it. I know Phil has, but it's so funny. He's like, these cute guys. They're. I like their dedication to going around the galaxy and picking fights with people.
Well, that's what's crazy is it in a way it was good because it prompted me to dig deeper into their story and figure out, like, who the heck are these two guys? Like, are they just two random thugs that are just trouncing across the galaxy, like picking fights, like you said, or is there something deeper?
I'll have to actually go look, because I don't.
It's the Star Wars universe. Obviously, they're deeper in. Well, you get a character whose name is Doctor or something or other. There's a backstory. There's got to be a reason he's in a random, hive of scum and villainy and somewhere else.
All right. So then, if we want to talk about the Star Wars Rebels things, there's a number of Star Wars Rebels Easter eggs, I guess you'd call them. So, I mean, one, when you go into, and it was leaked on the forums, in the interwebs, but basically when the massive starship battle happens around the planet, you do see the Ghost, or at least a VCX 100 in the fleet,
flying around.
Yeah. Taking part. You do.
It was parked in one of the hangar bays too.
Well, yeah, Phil and I saw him in the hangar bays, but I don't know about you, Phil. I didn't actually notice it the first time around in the fleet fight.
Yeah, I didn't notice that until somebody showed a picture, but
it was on the interwebs, and I saw it. It was like at the bottom left in one of the fleet fights, and then it was in a hangar, which I totally missed. There was another point where they actually had Chopper in the background. When Mon Martha, I didn't see it. I had to read about it.
That was pointed out to me in one of the trailers. I think somebody had it pointed out.
Yeah, and then there was another moment when they were walking through the base, and like General Sadula, and that is actually Hera's last name, and it could be her father, because her father was in the Clone Wars, in the Clone Wars cartoon as a Twi'lek,
I think
rebellious fighter.
Someone asked that question to, I think, one of the Star Wars people in Lucasfilm, and they clarified that it was Hera Syndulla.
Okay. Yeah.
But
So
yeah.
Hera, the Twi'lek pilot of the Ghost, she becomes a general in the rebellion. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is very cool.
So there were a number of Easter eggs for Star Wars Rebels fans, which is pretty cool. So you know Hera doesn't die at all in the series.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, as far as you know, I mean, it's not canon until they finish that series out, right?
Well, no, it's canon because it's.
They're not going to contradict a movie.
Yeah.
I don't know. It could have been her father, for all we know. That was just some random guy spouting out.
They confirmed it was her.
Did they had it?
Well, I guess they could go back on that, but I find it very unlikely. And also, Chopper's there. I mean, come on.
No, I don't see any reason why they would. I mean,
everybody else can die. Everybody else in the show can die, but Hera and Chopper are good.
Yeah.
So, how would you guys like to proceed with discussing some of the finer points of this movie? You
all right,
go
can I
go
out?
Everybody knows the plot and dig deeper into other stuff.
I am very pleased with the movie. I was concerned that the hype was going to not, make it not as good enough. I'd go in with high expectations and be dashed upon the rocks of reality. And I tried to temper my enthusiasm, but it rocked my world. And I consider it one of the best, if not the best, Star Wars movie of all time.
I will second that. I went back to work the following, Monday, and everyone that asked me, I said, not only was this, for the first movie that ever beat out my Star Wars favorite of The Empire Strikes Back. This is the best Star Wars movie I've ever seen, but it's actually one of the top movies I've ever seen, I think, in my life, just for sheer fun factor. It's got to be in my top 3, I think, of all time.
Yeah, and I've met people that are like, oh, nothing will ever replace the original 3 from my growing up seeing
because
them.
They've got the nostalgia factor.
And I get that. I get that.
Blinders looking backwards,
like rose-colored glasses. But I am willing. I consider myself open-minded and willing to be wowed anew. And this movie did it. This movie totally rocked. These various minor complaints that some I understand, some I think are just flat out stupid. I've heard are minor tidbits, and I thought it was freaking awesome. One of the best movies of all time. I love it.
So I also really enjoyed this movie. I think I think I basically agree with you guys in that it may be my favorite Star Wars movie. It probably definitely would be if it weren't for nostalgia factor.
Right.
And one of the things that made it really enjoyable for me was the way they sort of painted the rebels in a more gray color, right? Because perfect example is when you're first introduced to Cassian Andor.
Oh, you mean like in the first 5-10 minutes of the movie?
Yeah, immediately after the movie starts, he's
awesome.
Meeting this contact, and he's like, first of all, he's pressuring the guy to start talking. He's very aggressive in the way he's like, come on, spill the beans, let's go. I haven't got all day. And then when, first of all, the stormtroopers find them and ask for his ID, right? And he's like, it's right here in my pocket. And he just blasts them right in the face, right? That was kind of badass enough, right? And then when he ends up shooting this contact in the back because he's not going to be able to escape, and he's worried that he's going to give him away to the Empire. I don't think anybody saw that coming.
I gotta tell you guys, in the theater, I've never seen Phil have any emotion or reaction on his face ever in my life before. But when that scene happened, I looked over at him and there was actual shock on his face. I couldn't believe it. It was awesome.
Yeah,
that's funny. Yeah, there were some great. I like how dark they put the light they put the rebellion in, where it's very much a do anything it takes in order to get, in order to take your country. I hate to say country, but take your galaxy back. It's like, if we have to, kill people's fathers, that's fine. Whatever we think is the best course. It really showed them in this. To put it boldly, what it is, they're not rebels in this movie. They are terrorists in this movie.
Yeah,
they are
it's like
out
freedom fighting. It's
out
absolutely
to do as much damage as possible.
They cross the line more in this movie. Yeah,
and the whole bit about how Janet Erso wants to go and do this. And Cassian shows up, and he's like, look, I joined this rebellion, and a bunch of these guys joined this rebellion, and we want to do stuff, and we've done some questionable things.
Yeah,
and
terrorism, sabotage, assassination.
Yeah, it's like we want to do something good. We want to make something. We want to have it all mean something, and we can't look ourselves in the mirror if we don't do this.
I think the idea was that they couldn't let the rebellion fall apart, which is what was happening.
Yeah.
So they
it was like all for nothing.
They needed to roll
Or is
hard
it that
six.
they've also done some really dark and questionable things, and they're supposed to be
Yeah.
good guys, and here they are, like, not able to even look at themselves in the mirror for all the horrible things that they've done, and and they're going to make the decision to go ahead and actually sacrifice themselves or go on a suicide run for something greater, because otherwise they're just a whole bunch of horrible people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought that was a really powerful moment when they did that.
Powerful,
It's
beautiful.
like we've spent our entire lives, because he said from the age of 6, and who knows about the other guys, but essentially they've spent their entire lives doing very, very bad things, and they just can't go back into normal civilian life. Oh, sorry guys, rebellion's over. Let's just go back and they can't. They know it. They know their hands are dirty, and it almost felt like all of them knew when they went into it, not when they made that choice to go and assault the Scarif, but more when they got into it, they knew that we're not coming out of this on the other side. Like, no matter how, if we succeed as a rebellion, none of us are going to come out of this on the other side of it.
And we're meant to think that these guys are the kinder, friendlier rebels, as opposed to like Saw Gerrera's group.
Yes,
Too extreme.
Right. So,
they're running around using the Borgolite on people, sucking their brains out. If they don't trust them.
These guys are the freaking rebellion, the good guys. The other guy and the other one group's too extreme. What the hell are they doing that makes them get them kicked out? If you're filled with assassins and terrorists and such, and killing your own contacts,
I think it was. I think at least what I got out of it, and you're right. How bad can Saw Gerrera's group be? I think it was more that the guys in the rebellion, the Cassian characters, and the ones behind them are, in a sense, the scalpel. They're the assassin's blade versus the cudgel that is the Saw Gerrera's group, where they openly attack essentially an imperial group in the middle of a city. Like, they don't warn everybody to get out. They just right in the middle of essentially a marketplace, crowded marketplace. They're willing to take them.
There's almost like the civilian
matter.
Casualties. The little kid. They really the scene with the kid was like supposed to show exactly that. Like, oh man, they don't care who's in the way. This collateral damage is not part of their equation.
Yeah, it's very much shades of gray. Is that the rebellion were gray and then dark gray, and I think that was what they're getting at, is that there is no light side in this. There is no.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's hard to say that that's the case for everybody. Like, I could see,
of course,
maybe what was his name? The Admiral dude, Admiral Gradden.
Aimbot.
No, not
the
Mon Calamari, the blue Mon Calamari. They seem like pretty straight up,
like the rebel
no
ones
nonsense
that no one loves. Yeah, like they were from the original 3 movies. You could tell. I mean, the original 3 was more not the goody two shoes, but you know what I mean. Compared to this, we
didn't see them do anything questionable. Those guys, and they seem to be doing their own thing. They were sort of compartmentalized from the rest of the rebellion, I think.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Anyway, so it's hard to say that like the whole rebellion was painted in shades of gray. But certainly parts of it were.
Yeah, I will say though, just as a side note, I told my son he goes, oh, those guys are like the Admiral Akbar guys. I was like, oh yeah, the Mon Calamari. He's like, wait, what? Mon Calamari, because he's recently tried calamari.
Yeah.
And he's like, calamari. I'm like, yes, they're called Mon Calamari. He just died laughing. I'm like, yes, calamari. Like the seafood.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah. But I did really like. I kept thinking that the other groups gotta, like, I don't know, put explosives in babies. And have them go on tours of Imperial factories, or
I bet you that's exactly it.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean,
there's no doubt in my mind now that you've said it.
And get into like firefights with imperial officers at career day at elementary schools. Just like, they got to do these really horrible things if these guys are kicked out of the rebellion because they're just too extremists. I was like, holy crap! What are they actually doing to be so bad if these good guys are really so? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I do absolutely agree with what you're saying about the whole shades of gray, etc.
It was a great thing to add into this movie. It made the movie feel more adult and kind of more realistic than just seeing the one side of the rebellion that we've always ever seen, which was our very morally high ground Luke Skywalker, not Han Solo, but
Leia,
Leia. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked how there's no doubt that Captain Andor shot first. He shot first 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
No
Wait, what was that?
there.
What do you mean?
Like when he's shooting the guy in the back.
Yeah.
I definitely
Han
shot first.
Shot first.
I gotcha. Yeah. There's
None of this.
Here.
Greedo shot and hit the wall for some stupid reason.
But guys, in 10 years, they're gonna CGI that scene.
No, they're not.
Yeah,
Lucas is removed, so it's okay. Everything's
It's gonna be a stormtrooper that accidentally
yeah.
pulls the trigger on the ground and is gonna
Well, at this
90
point,
degrees sideways.
Now that the groundwork is there, they're just going to roll into, let's just go ahead and remake A New Hope. I mean, we got all the people now. I mean,
No.
They'll
They'll
redo
remake
the faces and
1,
everything
2,
will be
and 3
great.
before they remake A New Hope.
Honestly, they'll
Honestly,
never
you know what? That wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for me. I wouldn't mind seeing episode 1, 2, and 3 done in Clone Wars animated style, or even just real movie style. But I don't know. But I've mentioned it before. The Clone Wars. I can't speak. The Clone Wars episodes, the series that's on Netflix that you can see, is awesome. To me, that kind of brought life to it, or it gave it some redemption.
Yes.
But yeah, I think
I
they should
agree with that.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think it's all in jest, but there's no way they would ever remake any of the
Movies.
6 essentially at
You
this
sure?
point.
Well,
I
okay.
think there are
think
movies in Hollywood that are, for lack of a better term, untouchable. They will never remake The Godfathers. I don't care how much money people throw at them, because they just can't be remade in such a way that people will ever be happy with them. I can't.
disagree.
But
Well,
would you have said that
remaking
about
4, 5,
like
and
Star Trek though? Would you have said
No.
that a Star Trek
No.
reboot would be impossible?
No, I never would have said it about Star Trek. I don't consider Star
Really?
Trek
I mean-
to be not the originals. No, not to be crass about it,
know.
not to be a Star Trek hater, but I never looked at the original Star Treks in the way that I look at movies like The Godfather, movies like
Star Wars.
Star Wars, movies. What is it?
Well, look at Ben Hur. They redid Ben Hur. I mean,
look
there's
what it did. It flopped
sucked.
horribly.
Well, yeah, but
and Hollywood learns that. Like they stop
disagree.
remaking
I think-
some of these.
no. I think they think there's certain things they remake every 10 years, like
Hulk.
Robin Hood. There's always every 10 years there's a Robin Hood movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think you can go back since the first Robin Hood movie. There's probably every 10 years there's a Robin Hood movie. And that's always going to be repeated and remade and etc. But I think that eventually they're going to remake everything because Hollywood is stupid.
I think that J-Bot, you're correct in our lifetime, but I am almost going to guarantee you that when we're dead, there's going to be that whole like, you know what? We do like 3D virtual reality movies that we just transmit to people's brains in their houses. We should definitely redo the Star Wars movies. That was a cool thing.
Make
Yeah,
100
when
years
they
ago.
start doing
now.
brainies, they
Yeah.
might redo it.
But that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying though. It's like, I agree with
I
you.
saw that
think
on a
there's
Blipford.
certain untouchable aspect to it, just like you said, The Godfather. But I even actually think The Godfather might be getting close to the discussion somewhere in Hollywood of a remake. But I do feel like might be more of like when the population that thinks like you and I, like that these movies are untouchable. Hey, our kids are not going to be thinking that. They're going to remake it.
Yeah, and it's an interesting argument because, as an example, I never had any interest in going to see Ben-Hur, and I like Ben-Hur. If they remade The Godfather, I'd never go see it. But if they remade Star Wars, I'm fairly certain all of us would go watch it. I mean, that's the one difference in it. But and I've made the joke. I have a friend of mine. I'm a huge Harry Potter fan as well, and I made the joke to a friend of mine. I said, "Well, it's time to let's go ahead and start over." Like, what are you talking about? I said, I mean, it's a 7-year long story, right? And so you might as well finish it, wait 2 or 3 years, and just start over from number one. That way you've got a decade between like the first one and just keep rolling. Like, you can't do that. It's sacrilege to do. I'm like, why is it sacrilege? Like, it's Hollywood's going to do it. We might as well get 3 or 4 versions of it in our lifetimes instead of waiting until we can get like the definitive. Like, let's say they started remaking 4, 5, and 6 right now, using the model that they've kind of learned from Episode 7 and from Rogue One. This kind of, it needs to be in a sense more adult, needs to be more gritty, needs to be more now, needs to be more kind of modern day feel to it. We might look at those and say, God, these could be the best things they've ever done. Wow, these are definitive. But if they never do it, we'll never know. So I said, maybe they should start that with Harry Potter, and then maybe we'll get 3 or 4 iterations instead of we're 85 and we get like I guess the Chamber of Secrets, which is the second one. You're like, God, these are the most amazing ever. I'm never going to live long enough to see the last 5 movies.
Well, okay.
I'd rather them either make one choice or the other. Remake them all the time and just get into a cycle so I get to really enjoy them. Or don't
that
ever
sounds
do it
awful.
Or don't ever do it.
Now,
but
can I get like an
happen.
original story
here?
here?
We're gonna slice Star Wars up into these little like
the
6
best
months
one of the best parts about Rogue One is that it's outside the trilogy. They can do whatever the hell they want with these characters. And you can't do that with like a reboot.
I gotta say though, listen to this. So we talked about what's sacrosanct and what shouldn't be touched. And Harry Potter, you want to talk about Godfather, etc. How many people love episodes 1, 2, and 3 straight out from the movie theater the way they were done?
Crickets. I find very few people.
They're out there. People. I mean, there are people out there.
There are some. There's one at my office that absolutely loves the new ones as opposed to the originals. So they're out there.
So if they redid episodes 1, 2, and 3, do you think the masses would be crying, "Oh no, that's sacrosanct, they shouldn't be doing it"? Or do you think people are going to be cheering and going, "Hell yeah, make them good, please"?
Well, see, what's funny is I'm fairly certain we had not this much of a discussion, but a similar one in a previous podcast, and I said, I'm ready for them to remake 1, 2, and 3, and I got hammered for like, they're never going to remake those, and I'm like, why wouldn't you want those remade? Because
I think
to me, it's like if you're going to redo it, like you gotta at least do 1, 2, and 3. I would, if I were to remake anything in the Star Wars universe, it would be those before I touched 4, 5, and 6.
You know what I would do? I would remake them if I could go back in time and prevent 1, 2, and 3 from coming out the way they are. If I could just go back in time and replace them.
Well, yeah. Here, if you go back,
well, why would that matter?
Rebooting them? I don't know, man.
Imagine if you had they could chop it up and change it. They could get different actors. They could change the plot enough for as long as it sticks with the Clone Wars cartoons and such. They could really change it around, and they could remake an episodes 1, 2, and 3. And see, at this point, they've already invested like how much into redoing Tarkin and Princess Leia and such for episodes 4. I don't see them redoing episode 4. I see them redoing episodes 1, 2, and 3, but not 4, 5, and 6.
I don't see them redoing any of them, but we're way off into the weeds here, guys.
All right, we are.
So,
we're not talking about Rogue One.
Focus.
All right. So how about we go something totally exciting? The freaking space battle. Was that not so cool? The whole spaceship.
Can I say something about the
I want to say
something.
Something.
Okay. Well, I said first.
All right, you go first. I get second.
He's got rank. Phil's got rank.
Can we talk about where these ship designers are putting their bridges? Please?
Oh,
come on, guys.
That's been around for ages.
Yes, it's been around for ages. It was demonstrated to be a stupid idea in Return of the Jedi when you see someone take out the bridge, and then the whole Super Star Destroyer crashes into the Death Star because one part of the ship got damaged.
Yeah, but
one highly exposed
they haven't learned
exterior.
That lesson yet.
Well, yeah, but you would think that that's the first time a bridge took a hit in the history of
Yes.
The galaxy?
I have to imagine that those forward lasers must be so incredibly potent that it has just never happened, or no pilot has ever been stupid enough to run straight at the overlapping fire. But I agree with you. I'm not. I'm just trying to defend. I do agree with you.
The Star Destroyer bridges are bad enough.
Those are bad.
The Mon Calamari cruisers from Return of the Jedi, they also have that exposed little bridge. It's actually probably more exposed than a Star Destroyer bridge.
It is.
It's like a little pod sticking up of the ship. The ship in this this movie takes it to an extreme.
The Mon Calamari
one. Way down there. It's like the ship length down, and it's a glass bubble.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you guys remember
let me be devil's advocate just for a second. Those are hilariously silly. But if you notice, there's one thing that Star Wars universe does not have, and that's essentially a view screen that lets you see what's actually happening. They don't have essentially TV technology.
This was a long time ago.
So they have to have at least a view screen. Now, I'll admit, the Mon Calamari ones are just hilarious. It's like a light bulb hanging on the bottom.
Now I'm thinking, on the Death Star, they have a view screen for the watching Alderaan blow up.
No, those aren't view screens. Those are glass.
That was a window?
Yeah.
I'm actually sure that I think he's... Well,
no, because they have weapon displays on that. They show weapon displays.
Yeah, they actually have overlays and displays, so it might be both, but I think Phil might be right. I think that it actually is a computer screen. Because remember when they
never see it anywhere else in any of the movies. Like, look at all the other technology.
Right in that respect.
Like, they don't really have that, and at least none of the other outside stuff I've seen.
They don't have
Not that explains the setup. I can understand it on the Imperial ships because they at least feel like, hey, I want one that's forward that lets me see what's going on out in front of me, and the rest of it looks armored, at least to some degree, at least armored.
And I should give the Mon Cal bridges a break because if you go by the lore, then those ships were not designed for combat initially. Not explicitly, anyway. They're long-range exploration and I think leisure ships, actually. Originally.
Is that the one that looks like a
to...
Q-tip? Is that the one I'm thinking of? It's got the long, spine that's real thin. That never made any sense to me. I mean, it doesn't.
Oh no, that's a Nebulon B frigate.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense in any way as a warship
also
to
does
me.
Not make a lot of
well, that's a medical frigate. That's a medical frigate. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's
right, and I get that it might be repurposed, but it, like I said, this just always felt weird to me.
Right. Well, Phil, I think that you're right. The glass bubble. When I saw that, I don't know if you guys ever played Halo, but it reminded me of the Pillar of Autumn. How in Halo, the Pillar of Autumn had this section right underneath it. It was just a glass little box, and that was the bridge. It was a glass box, and in Halo, there are no shields for human ships, so it's even more ridiculous. Like, hey, all you have to do is just one little, flyby, a bullet.
Well, no one ever does it. Maybe it's just like old school, like Napoleonic era warfare where you just don't shoot at the bridges of ships. That's not done. And until the rebels came along, you're like, they're shooting at our bridges. This isn't fair. Like, this isn't civilized warfare. What's wrong with these people? I laughed at that. I couldn't help but like, wait, he's not even standing on it. He's just hovering over a giant glass window.
My favorite part about that scene was when they actually did get a communication to the planet. The Mon Calamari actually like looks down and starts talking like he's talking right to like I can see you from here. It's a trap.
I couldn't get over because it felt like, okay, he's sending up this signal, right?
Yeah.
Is he sending it directly to the captain of the ship? Shouldn't it be going to a signal officer somewhere? Like, shouldn't there be someone, Captain, they're sending us the files?
I think they think they do.
I know there was somebody who said they got
someone
the file,
says we're getting a signal from the planet. It's defecting, blah, 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 blah. And then the admiral guy says, patch it through, blah, blah. And
maybe he did, and I just missed it and all the excitement because I was enjoying the rest of it. So.
Well, let me get, so Phil, that was yours. I tip my hat to you for getting first dibs. I wanted to mention about the fleet battle. One of the things that I really liked about the fleet battle was the fact that rebel ships were dying a lot, and so are Imperial ships. Like it wasn't this clear distinction like, oh yes, we've got the plot shield for the heroes of the rebellion. It was just like people were dying. Just like I saw Y-wings exploding like they should be exploding from like turret weaponry and like turbo lasers. I saw, of course, plenty of TIEs going down, which was is fine. But I also saw plenty of TIEs, like excellent pilots in those TIE fighters and TIE strikers shooting down X-wings and everything. And I loved. Yeah, and I loved the when that U-wing got blown out of the sky and landed on the planet. That was so cool because here I thought like, yeah, this stupid ship is going to have a plot shield for sure. I just know it. And then nope, that thing went down. And I love seeing the X-wing crash into the force shield and then actually like skid across the surface.
Yeah,
all the pieces of it.
Yeah. There were so many things about this that I really just appreciated, and I really didn't feel like there was that whole sense of, okay, the rebel fleet's here, here we go. It's just going to be an Imperial bashing. Like, no, the only critique I had, which I told Phil afterwards, which I think he agreed to, was that as an Imperial, as all of us as Imperial personnel here, it was embarrassing to see how poor our response time was to that rebel fleet warping right above the planet. We didn't get our fighters out for like 30 minutes, it seemed like. We had like dozens of TIE fighters there, and maybe 30 minutes is exaggerating, but like it definitely felt like 10, 15 minutes. We couldn't get those things in the air, and these things like got through the shield, and then they were like shooting at us. Our Star Destroyers, why weren't they? I don't know why they weren't like full firing, like getting
my favorite part of that whole battle, and I've already told Jim, and he knows what I'm going to say, is the bombing run of Ion. When they said it. Like there was one moment in the whole movie, I enjoyed the whole thing, and I was in a room filled with the uninitiated is kind of the best way to put it. A lot of people were there like, hey, I'm a fan of Star Wars, but like I could tell by their reactions to other stuff, in other words, lack of reactions to stuff that they, like when Grand Moff Tarkin turns around, for example, no one moved. Like no one in the whole place was like, that was interesting.
Right.
So I was trying to be low key. The one point where I was like, like that was when they bombing ran with Ion and just killed that Star Destroyer. I'm like, yeah, Ion. I wanted to yell in the whole place. That's what it's supposed to do. And I had to bite my tongue like, awesome, because you never see that in the Star Wars movies. You never see doing anything like that.
Y-wing starting attack run.
Right. And I'm like, they just Ion bombed a Star Destroyer.
Ion torpedoed.
Right.
No, it was they were bombs.
Well, they used ion torpedoes on that. They say ion torpedoes.
Did they say ion torpedoes? Because I thought they said starting bombing run, and then you see them
starting our attack. Yeah, they say they're starting their attack run and stuff like that. But
they fired forward. They were definitely missiles. Yeah,
I think the thing is I with the Star Destroyer, I remember they definitely used ion torpedoes on that, but I think they also used bombs on the shield gate station.
Oh, they were bombing,
dropping
like,
bombs
bombing
back.
runs a lot.
They were doing a lot of bombing runs, but I could have sworn it was ion bombs that they fired.
Torpedoes
at the thing.
They had two little ion torpedoes getting shot out the front for each one, like doosh. I was like,
oh, see, I could have sworn they were bombs. So they looked like they were falling out of the ships, not firing forward. That's the way it looked like to me, because it looked like they basically ran over it and you saw them drop from underneath it, is what it looked like.
No, they were firing torpedoes.
So,
see it again. I want to see it a second time.
I'll have to go watch it again. And if you're wrong, Jim, you're never going to hear the end of it. If I'm wrong, then that's just usual. That's how it works. You'll be like, hey, Mr. Ordnance, how did you not realize that those were bombs? I'm going to be doing that the rest of your life.
I'm sticking my neck out in the line for this official.
Y'all better hope you're right.
I do have to say, I like that scene a lot too. Even me being someone that hates to see Star Destroyers go down, it was a really cool scene to see.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, with the Hammerhead Corvette.
Oh, and that was. I mean, again, that was. Oh, okay. Let me touch on that because this is something. What did you say?
There's rabble about this.
Is there rabble? Well,
there's
I don't know
what
rabble
is. Yeah.
But let me just say my point of I didn't think I was gonna like that scene, but I really liked how they kind of finished it, which was that they called on for that Hammerhead Corvette. It came in. It did this really awesome ram of the Star Destroyer, and it was just enough, little tugboat that could, to push it into the other one. But the greatest thing about that scene was, again, there was no plot shield. That Hammerhead Corvette actually goes down with the Star Destroyer. It dies. It is impacted in the hull, and the hull warps around it, and you actually see it when the Star Destroyer crashes into the force shield. Like, that is still attached. And so there's a question mark, like, did they get out in time and escape odds? I don't know. But that Mon Calamari basically could have just sentenced that whole crew to their death to take out a bigger military target, which I think is great.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And the thing for me was, like, in a sense, those guys knew it. Like, they didn't, like, they didn't balk at it. They're just like, everybody
and you got
braced.
to see them. You got to see them on the bridge of the ship too, first person. Yeah, you knew they were there.
Yeah, and the thing for me is, I have not seen Rebels. I know all the people who've seen Rebels are like, oh yeah, I know exactly what that's from. So when I saw those, I'm like, Hammerhead, what is he talking about? Like, that was what ran on him. Like, what is he talking about, Hammerhead? And when it comes on the screen, I'm like, I almost went, holy bleep, it's a freaking Ender Spire, because I'm a Knights of the Old Republic guy, and that's where those ship designs came from. I'm like, holy effing girl, like, that's a freaking Ender Spire, and no, it's not identical, but I'm like, holy crap! And so after the movie, I went back and was like, like Googling like all the stuff, like, did they pull up in like a similar ship from the Ender Spire? And then I found the whole background to it. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. It was cooler for me than it was for everybody else. Ooh, it's from Rebels. Meh, Rebels. Pfft. It's a 4,000-year-old ship design that they just pulled out of mothball. That's what was running through my head. It was like, holy crap, they got a 4,000-year-old ship that they just rammed into this thing. So I love that scene because it, like you were saying, Jake, it just had so much attention to detail. It was like, when I first saw it, I'm like, oh great, it's gonna ram this. Like, I'm like, it's gonna ram the ship and it's gonna drive it into the I'm like, okay, I see what it's doing. But they basically, it wasn't just that it hit the ship; it was that it dug in. Like, when they waited for the
even dug in.
Kill the engine.
If I could describe it, I'd say that Star Destroyer skinned the other Star Destroyer. Like, it was like,
I'm saying the Hammerhead, like, you could see it.
Oh, yes, that
wedged in there. Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah, I was like, wow, that's a great touch. But I didn't see it, like, kind of essentially decapitating the Star Destroyer as it was going by. I'm like, oh, that was more than I was expecting. And I told Jim, I said, that seems really extreme. These Star Destroyers are made out of really thin stuff. That's all it took. Apparently that should be the tactic for all of them. To hell with shields.
I feel
just run another ship at it.
Yeah, the only thing I can say to rationalize again is that the Imperials really were caught with their pants down. I really don't think they were fighting at their full effectiveness. It was great that the Y-Wings had that opportunity to... I mean, Y-Wings are supposed to be, like, easy targets, and they just weren't getting shot at. And so the Empire really foofed on that one. They got a full bombing run in, or, torpedo run in. The whole ship was disabled. And when you think about the physics of it, I mean, technically, a tugboat like that, the Hammerhead with good engines, can definitely push that and change the trajectory.
Oh, certainly. When it's just listing in space. And
listing in space with A, no shields, and B, no weapons. That Hammerhead would have never been able to get that close to a Star Destroyer without getting vaporized if it had weapons. So I think that it all made sense. It was all perfect.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I was a little perturbed, to use a fancy word, when let Vader handle it, sort of thing, and he shows up and what looked like one ship and just went beep beep beep, and I know a bunch of them kind of impaled themselves on the side of a ship as he came out of hyperspace.
And they'd also been fighting 2 Star Destroyers for a long time.
Yeah, and it's like, wait a minute, they were fighting a couple of them, and he just went in and went pew 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 pew, like straight out of hyperspace. Like, he didn't jump in, take like a breath and start firing. No. It was like almost as if the lasers were like, all right, start firing now. I'm hitting the stop button.
They're Imperial. They knew they were going into a hot zone, and they were gunners were ready, on fingers on the trigger. And
it's also that's also an elite Star Destroyer. That's Vader's personal Star Destroyer.
Yeah.
Right,
so,
and I get that. Doing. It was hard for me to understand, not knowing like all the background to it. One of the guys at work at the store was, I think it was Jason, was saying he thought it for a moment when Vader was going to show up, it was going to be the Super Star Destroyer, I think is the one.
It wasn't finished.
But and then he's like, wait a minute, it wasn't built yet. I don't think it was finished yet. But I was like, God, those guys came out like, they didn't just come out of space and then start shooting beep 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 like wildly. They hit that guy and hit that guy and hit that guy as soon as they came out of hyperspace. And then people were like, oh, well, they impacted on their shields. I'm like, well, we've just seen from the Hammerhead that a ship that big hitting any of these other ships is going to do a crap ton of damage to it.
No, but the shields were down, though, remember. And we know that a ship can skid across shields like it's a physical object. We saw that. So I feel like the shields being up, especially on a Star Destroyer, shields are supposed to be like nigh impenetrable, really, really good. But I do think that you hit on a really good point there, and I'm glad you brought it up, because there's like really nothing for me to gripe about this movie, but there was just two things that kind of stood out, and one of them was that, and like it seemed more for the impact of the scene than anything else. Tarkin kind of came in with a massive Death Star and said, don't engage the fleet. We'll just take care of the thing. Darth Vader will take care of it. It almost seemed like, well, I mean, I'm glad that it happened that way, because obviously for the cinematic effect, I wanted to see Darth Vader Star Destroyer get in there and just wreck face, which, oh my God, did it do. And then he was able to have that personal touch at the end, which was phenomenal.
Yeah.
But I do agree. I think like Tarkin has a battle station, which we know can actually get pretty close to that planet. And why wasn't that like the immediate thing? Like, let's just, turbo laze everything that we see right now,
The question that you were mentioning about shields, they only ionized the one Star Destroyer. So why was that one able to do so much damage to the second one, which would have had its shields up?
For the same reason that when the Star Destroyer impacted on the planetary shield, the shield basically went down. Because I think that, again, this is just
if you notice, it didn't hit
it.
the shield. It hit the shield generator. Like when it impacted the shield, it hit that metallic, essentially, space station ring. I would actually
disagree with you on that, just for the sake that I don't think that was a shield generator. I do agree that was the structure that let in and out, but Phil and I were discussing that the amount of power you would need to shield an entire planet is absolutely ridiculous. And yes, the Empire can afford it, but there's got to be like multiple shield generators on the planet feeding up.
Yeah, I would expect that the main shield generators are on the planet somewhere, just like how they had the Death Star shield generator in Return of the Jedi
on the planet. Yeah. So I do think that, a shield, just like it's supposed to be in the lore, can take so much hits or so much damage before it actually gives way. And I think that two Star Destroyers, think about the momentum.
Oh, no, I get that. It was just odd. I mean,
I get it.
They talk in the thing like how much can that shield take when they were basically trying to bomb the actual aperture.
More than a couple proton torpedoes, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But I don't know about you, but I thought, and I think Phil had mentioned this too, which was a really cool thing. And Phil, I might even just let you talk about it, but it kind of gave a great explanation as to, how many rebel forces we had in the next movie.
Yeah.
So why don't you go ahead and touch on that?
Well, yeah, like one of the things that is a bit odd about Episode 4, when you look at it in context of all the other movies, is that the rebels only throw like a squadron and a half of ships of starfighters at the Death Star, and that's like, is that all they had? I mean, the entire rebellion.
Yep, that's all they had left.
Yeah, but
and so
now it makes a lot of sense, because and like they were just letting anyone go, right? Like Luke Skywalker shows up 5 minutes before the battle, and they're put him in an X-wing.
Get him in an X-wing
with presumably their best forces, right? Like, yeah, sure. Big says you're a decent pilot, so sure, I'll let you fly in my squadron. Sure, we'll bet the fate of the galaxy on you. Sure, but now it makes a lot more sense that they would be desperate for any qualified pilot, any remotely qualified pilot.
Yeah, they wanted Han too, and it was just so great that you actually see when they're hyperspacing out, a handful of Rebel X-wings and Y-wings actually make it out as the Star Destroyer, the Devastator, just comes right in, and I loved seeing that freaking. There's like 2 Corvettes that were right there about to jump, and they just went pop.
Yeah, they just get crunched.
Yeah,
it splatter on the windshield.
Yeah, that was the part that was kind of a shock to me. It made me jump back for a second. Like, holy crap, that thing! They just they're gonna make it. At least some of them we know are gonna make it. Ooh, oh man.
And honestly, that was like so cool to see, because if you remember from A New Hope, like the Star Destroyer, you never saw that thing taking damage. All you saw it was chasing people and wrecking havoc on people, and it was just a thing that you had to run from. That was just it. Yeah. And this was that kind of same feel. The 2 Star Destroyers actually dying made me a little upset at first, because I was just like, well, dang, I mean, this is supposed to be the Imperial might, the best that the military has to offer, pretty much, except for the Death Star. But there they just took 2 out with that little very cool maneuver. But then when Darth Vader came in, it all made sense. That one Star Destroyer, and yes, Phil, you're right. I mean, they did just tango with 2 Star Destroyers, but that one Star Destroyer came in, immediately obliterated 2 ships, and like you said, J-Bot, those turbo lasers were hot when they jumped in. They jumped in, and it was like targets acquired. Boom, 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 boom. Like fighters going down, corvettes going down, the capital ship disabled. Just a beautiful thing. The Nebulon B frigates were just exploding. Those are frigates. Those aren't small ships. It was just very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, it was. I heard somebody coin the phrase that this put the war back in Star Wars that this movie did. And we haven't even kind of touched on the ground battle that we saw on Scarif of how brutal. I mean, obviously this wasn't Saving Private Ryan. this
of
wasn't one of those movies. It's not where they were going with it, but just seeing, like, in a sense, and I know I mentioned this with K2, how many stormtroopers, in a sense, died on this. This was before they essentially, I know they didn't nuke the planet entirely, but before they essentially killed everybody that's on that little reef or whatever that was. Right. Just the rebel ground forces, you had this feeling, at least I got this feeling from it, that in an almost stand-up battle, the two were almost equal, where it's like, hey, the rebel forces on the ground. And now, granted, the rebel forces that were on the ground, at least at the beginning, were in a sense a special forces style unit.
And they also had the upper hand based on position, right? Like they were dug in. So
and you got this feeling that, like, hey, on any given day on a pitched battle, it's not just Imperial might. It does come down to tactics and stuff.
Yes.
But it was once they, in a sense, like the numbers was the game for the Empire, was just keep sending more men at them. They'll eventually, falter. But then you see, there was a huge bone. I watched a lot of reviews. I watched a lot of stuff afterward. Where people kind of nitpicked. Obviously, I do that too, but the one that, in a sense, kind of made me the most upset was at least seemed like the most, like, I'm not really thinking this through very well, is people who missed some stuff. Everybody kept calling them Death Troopers, right?
The black ones.
The black ones. Now, I might have missed this completely, but I don't remember them ever mentioning them as Death Troopers in the movie.
I think
they might have had it on
been
packaging.
Marketed as Death Troopers.
Right, they might have had it on packaging. And that's fine. But in the movie, they are, what's his name? And I cannot think of his name. Personal guard. They are not described as Death Troopers. You don't see them wandering around all over the place. They're his personal guard. And he makes a very distinct line in it, commit my personal guard, something along those lines, to the battle. I'm going to XYZ. Right. And that's when you see them actually hit the ground. And obviously they're the big bad guys who really actually can aim. I think somebody was joking about. I'm like, yeah, they're his personal guard. They probably are the cream of the cream. They are probably the absolute best, because that's what this guy would do, is he'd surround himself with the best and then probably give them uniforms that look slightly different than the rest, so they stick out. And maybe they do speak to a much larger group of Death Troopers that exist, but as far as the movies are concerned, they were his personal guard.
True.
And so I had no issue. There's a lot of people, you never see these again in 4, 5, and 6. And I'm thinking, yeah, they're his personal guard. They all died on Scarif. Whether they survived or not, they got nuked from orbit by Tarkin. So I have no issue not seeing them.
And Phil actually had a good idea of what they might have represented in our terms, like in World War II kind of a thing, right? Didn't you say they were like?
We have to remember that Krennic is part of the ISB, the Imperial Security Bureau, and that's like the secret military police of the Empire. That's why he's got that spiffy white uniform instead of normal Imperial Navy gray. We have seen guys in those uniforms before.
Episode 4 has one.
Exactly.
Sitting in that conference room with the Death Star.
Yeah. So, the troops in that ISB has might be separate from the standard Imperial Army/Navy troopers that we see in the other movies. And there's really no equivalent character to Krennic that we see in those movies, so it's very reasonable that we wouldn't have seen these guys.
Right, and you were mentioning that these were like you said, almost like secret police kind of a thing. Just more not so much like frontline combat people, but more of like oh shit, like the quote unquote death troopers are here. We gotta put your phone away. Don't text on the job.
And they're very specific flavor. Those guys too. I mean, they're not all. You wouldn't necessarily expect all of the Imperial elite troops to be dressed like that and to be equipped like that.
Yeah, I still like the personal guard. They're like a prestige unit. He comes up with a prestige unit that's his personal guard that he kind of they're death commandos, and
it might be better laid out in the novelizations, and I'm sure we'll find out exactly what these guys' deal is. I mean, we won't have to imagine for very long. I think.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It was funny, me being the complaint guy, to see some of the complaints from reviews that I saw where they were pointing that out. I was like, there's other things that you can point to that are a little more shady than that, because that one felt in my head that they pointed to specifically. My personal guard, send my personal guard, and that's when those guys show up. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a send the death troopers in. He very specifically said my personal guard. And that might have been called death troopers, but
marketed as such. Yeah,
right. They have been marketed that way more. And I wouldn't be surprised if part of that was, Disney saying there's a lot of people who've been wanting death troopers for a really long time. Well, we know they're just his personal guard. No, they're death troopers now. As far as the action figure is concerned, it's a death trooper.
Right.
But in the movie, for me, in the movies, they fit fine as a personal guard, and with maybe a wider ranging outside of it that we just never see.
Right. Since we're on the topic of ground combat and everything, just a quick show of hands here. How awesome was that scene where Baze shoots a surface to or ground to air missile at the AT-AT or AT-CT, and then it just like shrugs it off and turns its head right back. And Baze is like, what the?
Yeah, that's why. That was why he was kind of an honorable mention for a second. Favorite character for me, because he had that like, yep, got him, and then he's like, oh, and he kind of like looked down like, ooh.
Well, the reason why I love that so much was, in the trailers, like you actually see that scene, but you don't see that you think that it actually does some major damage. And Kylo Ren in one of his rants of the trailers is like, what? A surface-to-air missile took out an AT-AT? Boy, I wish they had that on Hoth, right? It was just that same kind of mentality, like, why didn't they just have, gosh darn, surface-to-air missiles? That seems just ridiculous. But then I loved that little twist of boom, gets hit, and then just slowly turns back like, oh no, we're gonna get blasted. Oh, so good, very good scene.
Well, I guess now we're on the ACTs. We're just kind of jumping around stream of consciousness here. They had they have a character I think that is in the U-wing box, maybe as a crew card. I did not know his name. He's a little kind of gremlin character with a big mouth.
No, not Bistan. The one with the big mouth. Bistan's the furry guy.
I think that's what he's talking about.
I think Bistan is it.
No. Bistan
Pow is not a crew card. We don't have him.
We
you're
don't.
Thinking about the guy, the big reptilian.
I'm talking about
big mouth guy.
Yeah, Pow.
Right.
No. I'm thinking Bistan. Okay. Shorter, but still the crazy big mouth. He's only, at least, and I'm sure he was in there all over the place, and I just never noticed him. The only scene I noticed him in was when he was essentially the kind of machine gunner out of the U-wings, like which I'm like, this feels very Vietnam-esque to me. Like that's when I started.
Yeah, the rebel uniforms too. The rebel troopers' uniforms were very very Vietnam, like the helmets.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But just the and the whole, I guess you got this, to me it felt very Apocalypse Now is when he started getting into some of this stuff, and him like just laying into the leg of one of those ACTs. I'm like, this is cool. Like this is what you kind of get this feeling of, hey, the ship itself, or at least the U-wing itself, is not doing all the actual like pew 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 off of its guns. It's a side gunner essentially. It's a guy on the out the troop door, just laying into something, which I'm like, that's really cool. I'm fairly certain the U-wing doesn't have that arc though, but oh well.
Okay,
maybe the crew card should give it that arc. That would be even better. But that's the only time I remember seeing that character, and I remember it jumping into my head like, doesn't this guy have a crew card? Like, how did he get a crew card? And like, there's not one for some of the other people who you at least felt to me like were more more on screen.
So there was that one moment with that one alien dude, but there was another point when Blue Squadron had the U-wing and they were strafing the field. Was that a Wookiee or was that some other fuzzy creature?
The white one?
Well, it was like the one that had the gun out the window and was like da 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 da. It was strafing the beach.
Yeah, that's what we've been talking about for.
Yeah,
that's
Bistan. Yeah,
that's Bistan.
Are you sure that's Bistan?
Yeah, he was
shooting.
Yes.
We just had that conversation. Yeah, he was the one shooting the ACT, the leg of the ACT that eventually took it down.
There's only one guy that shoots out the door of a U-wing in the movie. It's Bistan,
right.
aka
There's
Space
another
Monkey.
guy. There was another guy that was like a big mouth, semi-fuzzy dude. Yeah, whatever.
You're gonna have to point him out later.
All right. Yeah, I'll have to see it again because I've only seen it once, and it stuck in my mind, and I thought
you
that
have
was
to be
him.
more specific about big mouthed hairy dudes in the Star Wars universe.
Right, I know. He was short, and he was like a midget, but he
was reptilian.
Yeah, that's Bistan.
You're
thinking reptilian.
I think you're thinking of Pow, the reptilian guy with the huge, giant mouth. He looks like a midget, but there's no hair. He's more like reptile skin.
All right, maybe that's it. Yeah, I gotta look at the card for Bistan.
Could have sworn Pow had a card, but now I might be making things up now.
So.
All right, well, I'm making things up then. I'm just getting excited, is all. I got to get me some more of that Wookiee root that Phil passed out the other week.
Yeah.
You gotta be careful with that stuff.
Oh now, man, I didn't sleep well for a week.
I know this is totally. I know. What was the name of that tentacle monster?
Borgalet.
Borgalet. I was like, why never? Oh, God.
Bring the Borgalet.
I thought that was the name. I thought that was that creature's name, not what it actually was. I was like, what is that's his name?
It turns your mind to soup.
Okay. Pow. P-A-O. Pow.
Yeah, that's what I was talking
about.
Pow.
Yes. All right. I could have sworn that was Bistan. I was convinced, but no, the space monkey is Bistan.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Bistan's got an actual card.
Google's my friend. Sorry, I was Googling things in the background, trying to figure some things out.
Okay, so I'm looking to get this back on the kind of slightly X-Wing thing. Mm-hmm. Is there no K2 card at all? No pilot? No,
there's
K4.
Nothing?
Well, the K4's been around, though, and he's the scum pilot, or a scum card.
Yeah, but he's a K4 security droid instead of K2.
He's
like a later model.
We have a K2SO crew card, I think.
That's what I was trying to find. I was looking up their last news and was like, I don't remember seeing one. I know someone posted one on the Facebook page, like as a mock-up.
There's no K2 crew card.
Yes, there is. Isn't there? I'm almost
somebody's posted one on the Facebook page, but I think it's just their mock-up of one.
Oh my gosh, because
I'm looking right now on.
Oh my gosh. Reality and Phil's card thing is starting to mesh.
I know it's all starting to mesh.
I don't know what to believe anymore.
But I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, there's got to be one. Maybe I've just completely missed it. And I'm wondering now if the people from X-Wing knew enough about the movie or if it was all, now bear with me because it's going to lead into something else, trailer. Like if when they made this U-Wing, if they said, okay, we need the Bistan character because we've seen him in the trailer. We need X, Y, and Z because we've seen him in the trailer. And you mentioned at the beginning, Jake, that K2 didn't really have any scene in the trailer. Didn't really have any kind of obvious like this is going to be in a sense a fun character, one of the really memorable ones. Right. It makes me wonder if they bought into the trailers as much as apparently a lot of people did.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that they would have had it. They would have known more about the movie when they're preparing these expansions, working on these ships. They would have known. They probably would have had some limited knowledge of the script. Like, for example, and it's not to say that they had perfect knowledge of the movie. If you think about what they made for The Force Awakens, like when we had the equivalent release for The Force Awakens of the T-70 and the TIE-FO, Poe was pilot skill 8, when it's very clear from the movie that he should be pilot skill 50.
Right, they made a mistake.
Right, and that's what I mean, where it feels like they didn't know.
But they knew like his name, and they knew he was going to be a good pilot.
Right,
they didn't know 15.
Yeah,
yeah.
Well, and as I mentioned before, I only watched the first trailer, and then I basically went on don't talk to me, don't want to know anything about it until I saw the movie, because I didn't want to be spoiled. And oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I'm really glad you're bringing that up too, and I hate to interrupt your thought, but one of the interesting things going around, and also that I noticed too, is that there were very, very few scenes in the trailer that were actually in the movie itself. And I thought that was fascinating.
And that's what to me was funny, because I do any big movie that I know I'm going to watch, I'll see the first trailer for, and I'll basically ignore anything else that comes out. If it's a really big one like Star Wars, I'll turn the channel. Like when Star beep, and I'll turn the channel because I don't want to see it. And I was talking to Jim about tonight. When you start to delve into the Hollywood world a little bit and get behind the scenes on how they do this stuff, you start to realize, and it all makes perfect sense when you hear it. There are companies out there who don't make movies. They make trailers. They take your movie and they cut a trailer to it to a specific audience. Like, who are you aiming at? Who do you want this trailer to appeal to? Because as a Star Wars person, they didn't really need to do much to the trailer to get us. So the trailers are aimed towards people who aren't huge Star Wars fans. The best example I can give to this is, and maybe no one here's seen this, it's a movie called Fight Club. Maybe anybody's heard this?
Seen
it. No, we don't really talk about it, but if you go back and watch all of the different trailers for this movie, I mean, I'm sure you can dig them up online somewhere. There's one that makes it look like a romantic comedy. There's one that makes it look like the movie we all saw, in a sense, but almost none of them speak to what the movie actually was. And Star Wars, it's kind of different. You kind of got the idea what this was. This is about them trying to steal the Death Star plans. We kind of got that. But there was so much, and this is me going back after having seen the movie, because I only saw the first trailer, and I was like, there's some stuff that I don't remember seeing. I'll have to go back and research. There's so much of the trailer that when you go back and dig, you're like, they made this up specifically for the trailer. This was not made for the movie. It was made just to have a specific impact at a specific moment in the trailer. And the one I can point to the most, and it's the easiest one for me, although there's a lot of them, is the TIE fighter like popping up over the
exactly
right at the end.
I don't know. I mean, that could have been a scene that was cut.
But that's what I'm saying. Like,
they cut
genius,
a lot.
The genius of the trailers, and the thing that I really loved about it was I don't see any other trailers doing this. I feel like I see most movies now just by watching the freaking trailers, and then I don't even have to see the movie anymore. You know, they give too much. But J-Bot, you're absolutely right. This and Phil's right too. This was like all what do you call it? Like beta roll or B roll. Like it wasn't actually any scenes in the movie. The only one that actually was that I have seen so far was where they hit the AT-AT or the AT-CT with the rocket, but that was just like a little glimpse, and that was it. I mean, there were scenes where the AT-CTs were shooting and people were running out in the field. Did not happen. There was a scene where they were in like some kind of a railroad station and they were running with a whole bunch of Imperial droids.
Station, I believe.
Yes,
I referred to.
Did not happen.
Well, look at. There's like I said, I've watched a ton of reviews, watched a ton of stuff, so this is why it's all sticking in my head. The whole ending to the movie was different, at least in the trailers. Now, I've heard and watched a lot of stuff. People said they were in a sense rewriting this and still changing things up to, in a sense, the last minute, which doesn't seem that strange for Hollywood now. But they said, and like I said, I'd not seen the trailer, had not studied them. I saw the trailer one time, and that was it. Did not watch the first trailer over and over again like some people did. So going back and watching it a couple of times afterwards, I'm like, wow, the people who saw these trailers, who nitpicked and pulled apart every little frame by frame in these trailers, those people I feel sorry for, because they, in a sense, threw their lives away at something that was not real.
Didn't that make you feel happy in a little bit?
Absolutely.
Way?
Absolutely. I felt smug. I'm like, yes. I saw the movie knowing nothing about this.
Yes.
And I feel like I didn't miss a thing.
You didn't miss a thing, and they all spent their whole time doing it. You're absolutely right.
They had people, I watched one review where they're like, I kept waiting for her to say, well, this is rebellion, right? I rebel. And I'm like, I don't remember her saying that.
Like,
She said that. No, well, I was like, she never said it, right? Well,
Yeah.
I don't remember her ever saying it in the previews because I only watched it once and I didn't need, I didn't memorize it like some people did. And
well, I will say there was that point, and then not far after where Cassian Andor and the grizzled veterans came up, that there was some people behind us that were opening like some candy wrapper box or like for like a minute and a half. It was like, oh my God, people!
The scourge of a movie theater.
It drove me nuts. And I've snuck in candy and had a hard time opening it in the past, and I felt bad.
Of course, he snuck candy,
but I didn't take of course, being cheap. But I did not take a minute and a half to open a goddamn package of candy. It drove me nuts.
If we want to get into the movie theater experience, like
that's a whole different.
I could rant against the whole movie theater experience like to no end, but. I was actually no. I was lucky. I'll leave it at this. I was lucky because when I sat down, nobody was in the theater. 2 minutes before they started the previews, everybody jumped in like at the last minute, and there must have been 30 kids in there. I'm like, oh God, this is gonna be the worst. Not a peep. I'm like, this is awesome. Nobody said anything. Now, when the lights came up, it looked like a popcorn factory exploded in there. So I don't know if there was a popcorn fight going on during the movie, and I just missed it because I was so engrossed. But I was like, God, I feel so sorry for the little attendant that's got to come in here and vacuum. But yeah, we won't dig into the whole movie theater experience because I can go on for
let's
hours.
Not touch it. Let's not touch it.
Well, let me just say that you talked about all these things that jarred you out of the movie, and I had some people behind me that just jarred me out of the movie.
That definitely can do that. Well, the people that get up went to the bathroom 3 times that actually dragged me out. I'm like, how much soda did you drink? It's only a 2-hour movie. Like,
Cuban Boy told me, don't pee in the movie at all. And so I purposely did not drink anything for a while.
I had to pee, but I just peed myself.
Yep. Phil and I did the.
That's a real plan.
That's a real fan. Yeah, I got some Depends.
Actually, I do have to say one of the coolest things, and this is just a tiny little point here. I have to say one of the coolest things about watching that movie was being able to watch it with our co-pilot here sitting right next to me.
That's right.
It made the experience all the better. I actually traveled down opening night. I took a train down to the New York City, and I met him there. We slept over, and what did we wake up at like 6 a.m.?
We caught the 8 a.m. show.
We caught the 8 a.m. show. We woke up at 6 down to get to the movie theater, and it was good company. I'm telling you, you can't knock it for a good movie.
It's the one thing that I wish I could do. I've never had a chance to do. Is go to a theater filled with like pure fans. I'm not a big opening night guy just because I don't like crowds as much.
Yes,
but
me neither.
At the same time, I've been at a few like early release of games and books and things like that, and it's fun because you're surrounded by your people.
Right.
It's the same thing. What happens when I go to BronyCon? You're surrounded by. This is not a big fandom like Dragon Con. This is one very distinct group of people who love the same thing. And you probably have similar passions for other stuff, but that's all we're here for is this one thing. And I've seen it. Like at least they used to. They don't do it so much anymore. The news would be like, "There's a Star Wars release. Here's a bunch of freaky people out in Star Wars garb, standing out in line." And I've always been like, "Man, that would be so cool." Because during the movie, like there's oohing and awing and clapping and yelling. It's like that's how it should be. It should be. They're surrounded by people who love what you love, where I could, hell yeah, eye on that piece of crap like that. That as a rebel fan, like in the game, like I'm one of the few people who can be like, yeah, get me like that, and everybody else like, shh, this Empire, be quiet, and I'm like, no, I get to celebrate, because there honestly was, and I know I've griped about some stuff. This movie had so many great like fist pump moments for me. Like it's just like, yes, that's how it's supposed to be. Like that's how Vader is supposed to be. Like that's how, in a sense, ground combat this should feel in the Star Wars universe. That's how all of this stuff should work. And you never really got that. It was always there, kind of nebulous around the movies. It was never in the movies. It was never really like hammered into your head in the movies, and this feels like the one that they did. They said, nope, we're taking all these bits and pieces that have always been in the comics, have always been in the stories, and you never see, and we're putting it on the screen for you guys to just feast on. And
And then they even filled holes. I know that we're kind of skipping around here, but I was completely into the fact, and I know that Kylo Ren says it in his rant too, but I was completely into the fact that they talked about how it wasn't an Imperial blunder of making the Death Star so destroyable. Like, this was actually an inside job that was, meant to go up. And that was something that we had talked about in an earlier podcast, We had talked about, like, the engineering incompetence that, led to this. But really, it makes total sense. I'm buying it 100%. It was a great and elegant way to pacify my mind on that.
So here's a question for you. And I know Jake and I probably don't mean to take over the show, but in a way it's fun.
This is the most heavy Jake the Break and J-Bot episode that has ever existed.
So here's a question for you.
I'm ready.
Do you think that, obviously any Star Wars fan knows that that's always in a sense been this weird joke, like how does this giant space station get taken out by a small proton torpedo?
Right.
Do you think it's possible that someone in the Disney realm said, come on, guys, we gotta think up a way to kind of explain this, because it's really kind of silly. I mean, we've had a lot of years. Somebody in a big boardroom said, "Somebody, come on, give me something." And you have that one guy at the end of the table said, "Well, what if we wrote a movie that kind of explains why this wasn't stupid?"
Mm-hmm.
And said, let's do it. Yes, let's make a movie.
I mean, I don't think they made the movie just to do that, but I think it
feels like somebody said, "You got to at least close this loophole. If we're gonna make Rogue One, fix the loophole, please." If that's what they did, because they didn't. Now my memory is not good, because he didn't just say proton torpedo. I'm pretty sure he said even a blaster round will take this thing out if you get into it.
He never said proton torpedo at all.
Yeah,
he
very
actually just said that the reactor core is rigged to explode.
Right.
Even the slightest overload or attack could do it, and that could have been open to so many different interpretations.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have had a saboteur get onto the Death Star,
right,
and just set a single thermal detonator charge, and that would have boom.
Although the Rebel Intelligence Service is obviously not really up on its game. If the Imperials built the Death Star and they only found out about it, when somebody defected.
That was
think about how much resources went into this.
To me. Why are they strip mining an ancient Jedi temple for all the Kyber crystals? What's going on? Anybody know?
Yeah. Well, hold on.
And the thing is that the Death Star has been around. We know that the Death Star has been at least under construction or been being worked on since the end of Episode 3, 20 years.
Right. Well,
okay, but hang on.
At least they had the plans for it.
No. You see the skeleton of it.
Yeah, you see the skeleton of it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely in construction. So there's
so one thing at a time. So first, to answer your question, J-Bot, I do think that's pretty much exactly what happened. I agree with Phil. They didn't make the whole movie about that, but it was it was as if they had said exactly what you said. Like, you know what, guys, the fans of Star Wars, and we're all fans of Star Wars, let's be honest, but can someone in this boardroom, in this table, can we think of a way to plug that hole? Because it is kind of a hole that everyone recognizes. Can we do it elegantly? Can we make it into? Yeah. And they did it. And I thought
it was fan service.
It was fan service. It was good fan service.
Yeah.
In my mind.
It was subtle. I mean,
it was subtle, and it was
subtle. It was subtle.
Yeah. I thought it was beautiful. So that's number one. Number two, yes, the Death Star was being created right at the end of Episode 3. So it had been created for a long time. But to say that, I mean, this is supposed to be the most secret project that the Empire was creating. And to be honest, yes, the Rebel Alliance, but look at Rebels. I mean, their intelligence network isn't spectacular, and also it's a galaxy full of information. It's not just okay, the planet Earth, CIA can do its thing. No, this is the entire galaxy, and you can have tons of agents. But from what I remember, and there are even some episodes where you're getting clues about the Death Star's creation, but not remember when they went to Geonosis and they're like, what the heck was this scaffold station for? That is cool stuff, but no one has any idea. And also, if you think about it too, remember the Death Star 2, the plans for Death Star 2 were only revealed to the Rebels because Emperor Palpatine allowed it to happen. I think when the Empire is trying to have a secret kept, they can do it. I mean, if you think about who's the leader of the entire Imperial the entire Empire, it's Emperor Palpatine, who single-handedly deceived the entire Republic for years and years and years, and gained his whole thing is cloak and dagger and shadows. So I think that it's well within reason that we don't, that the rebels could
in a way I can buy that, and it sounds crazy, but I think the movie in a way, whether you called it or not, kind of explains it, what you're at. They know, it seems like at least they know everything that's going on, because Tarkin knows about the missing pilot from essentially a station that's in a sense not under his command. Like it's
not
some
even
over here. He's like,
well,
you're missing
defector,
a pilot,
though.
right? Well, they didn't know
high-level
he was
defector.
a defector.
That would,
Well, they didn't know he was a defector. They just knew that the pilot was missing. Like it was, and he was just a freight pilot. He wasn't like a high level, prototype pilot. He was just a freight.
I think they
pilot.
knew that he had defected. Actually,
he was a pilot for the people, the head engineer for the Death Star, their super secret project, their number one architect. He was that guy's.
So when he goes
pilot,
missing, it's a big deal.
Yeah, he's not just some guy.
Okay.
He actually was tied into some high level people.
Yeah, you gotta. That does make sense actually. Like if you have the most secret project, you're 100% on board about like making this the most secret project. No one knows about it, and you have a handful of people. You have maybe even more than a handful that have to know about it. I mean, think about all the manpower that went into its construction. You've got to keep that tight under wraps. So the minute that somebody doesn't clock in for duty on that project, it's like, okay, get J-Bot and get his blaster out there to go find whoever, that is.
Yeah.
Send in the enforcer droids and bring him before me immediately. Like it's that serious.
I mean, I would have found it more believable if the rebels had at least known that it existed in some capacity. Maybe like they only had rumors and they didn't believe the information they had.
Well, they knew. But
wasn't that the first scene?
They knew a little bit about. I guess they did know a little bit.
They did, right? Yeah, the first scene in the movie where he shoots his contact. The contact was shaking him down, and he said, like, "Listen, I don't know for what, but like they're this big construction. They're mining kyber crystals. Maybe that was kind of what you're alluding to."
Yeah. So I guess.
Yeah, and they never kind of timestamp that in any way either. So you don't know how far in advance that discussion in the alley was taking place relative to the rest of what was going on.
But also, they said, "Oh, with Orso," and the guy's like, "Jan Orso," or whatever the so-and-so Orso. Like he knew the guy's name.
Galen, yeah.
Yeah,
Galen Orso. They knew he was, somebody. He was a high-level weapons engineer. He wasn't just some schmuck. They knew he was they knew his name.
Yeah. And they knew that there was a massive weapons test underway. That they at least knew that.
Yeah.
So did anyone else find it rather interesting? I jumped to another topic right fast, where he essentially, the first shot that the Death Star fires is just kind of just one. I forgot exactly how he phrased it.
One reactor.
One reactor. You just fire like one chamber of this just for the effect. Beautiful. And they never really explained how big of an explosion it was, and maybe it was a weird perspective thing they were doing on purpose, but it looked like just that shower actually almost reached the Death Star itself.
No, it did. That wasn't just a perspective thing. That was like
how far they don't tell you how far the Death Star is away from it, from the planet itself, but it's like that's a really big explosion for one reactor. It's like just hip shot that for me, and
But that was another great thing about that movie, which was like, again, maybe going into fan service, which is that when you see episode 4, you see it fire, and they don't explain anything about reactors or engines or anything, but they fire at Alderaan, and that thing it pops. And so it's almost like unbelievable, like how ferocious that power is. But I love how they said that, let's spin up one of the 6 reactors here, and let's just see. And the one reactor created a weapon so devastating. It was like a mining laser. That thing went straight into the planet. The plume of dust and smoke and explosion, enormous. So it just led to that whole realism of like, oh my God, if all 6 were up and running, that planet would just
Yes.
pop. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I guess in summation for me, what does this do for you guys, and how you would? We had this discussion. I don't know if you were here, Jake, for the order that you would show a new fan the movies. Would you show this one before 4, 5, and 6 now?
You know what? Believe it or not, I was just talking about that to Rosemary, and when my daughters, kind of get more into that, I would want to show them Rogue One, and then I would want to show them 4 and 5 and 6. I think.
I think I'm on the same page too. I think I'd want to do this one first, so it gives you a lot of perspective on 4 that you don't really have going into 4.
But like if you go through the Clone Wars cartoon and all, they talk about the Death Star and the plans from the Geonosian dudes, and they talk about Tarkin, and they talk about a number of these things, like Vader and hints of him or Anakin turning evil. And there's all these things that, to me, it kind of foreshadows up to building the Death Star, so that's one of the reasons why, if I had someone who'd never seen them all, I would want them to start watching them from the very beginning chronologically and go through all the movies and shows, because it would show the lead up to the Death Star and the lead up to who Grand Moff Tarkin becomes and the lead up to all this stuff.
So you're also talking about the Clone Wars animated series, though. I thought we were just talking about movies strictly.
No. I say I would like to take was what I said. If you took someone from some strange planet or under a rock on Earth or something, and they don't know anything, I would have them watch episodes 1 and 2, but I'd watch the fan edits, the Fall of the Jedi fan edits that are better. They just cut out the stupid stuff, but otherwise it's the same movie. And then watch the Dexter's Laboratory Clone Wars Season 1 that introduced Grievous.
Oh, so great. Yes, that was my favorite.
Yeah, and what's her name? Ventress. And then watch 7 seasons of the Clone Wars cartoon. And then watch Season 2 of the, Dexter's Laboratory. And then watch Episode 3, the movie. And then watch Rogue One. And then watch 4, 5, and 6.
Okay, so honestly, if we were just speaking movies strictly, I'm with you, J-Bot. But I think, Captain, you've got yourself a deal there, because like I have mentioned many times before, Clone Wars, the animated series, in addition to the Dexter's Laboratory style Clone Wars animated series, that brought the whole prequels to light for me. Like, otherwise, I think it was a complete disaster without those.
Yes.
So if we're talking that, I mean, that's where I find all the rich story and all of, like, heck, I wouldn't care a single inkling about Anakin Skywalker were it not for those series.
Yes.
But yeah, I think that.
Oh yeah, the movies did him no favors.
The movies did nothing. It's like, I don't care about this at all. Like, but no, yeah, the series.
You didn't care about his love for Padme? Didn't he tell you enough times that he was in love with her?
That's right.
I hate the friend zone.
It hurts.
I hate the friend zone.
Shinobi.
Obi-Wan is such an asshole.
Yeah. So for me, I just can't, because I don't really kind of. And I've seen parts of it. I just can't really throw in all the cartoon stuff. For me, if I was sticking straight to the movies, it would, at this point, it would be Rogue One first.
Yeah, like I said, I agree 100%.
And before I let, I guess, Phil say it, the last little thing I had as a gripe, and this I've never heard this term before, and this is maybe just me being blind to it. I never heard saga movie before this came out. Like, I'd never heard that as a phrase. This is a saga movie. This is a saga movie. And then Rogue One's not a saga movie. It's not a saga movie. And I didn't understand it. And I had to dig around for people to even kind of even vaguely understand it. A saga movie is the one that has to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And anything that takes place in between, even though it's directly connected to the story, is not considered a saga movie. The reason I bring that up is the first thing that jarred me out of the movie was there was no scroll.
And I know there's a lot of people, cool.
And there's a lot of people like, oh, rah, rah, what? And I'm like, where's the scroll? I mean, for like the first 5 minutes of the movie, I'm like, where's the scroll at? And I don't understand why there's no scroll. They did the exact same opening establishing shot, or very similar, that they do in almost everything Star Wars related, except for there was no scroll. So to me, it felt very purposeful.
Like, I loved it. It was, again, a beautiful touch.
Why did they do this?
I thought it was great because it separated.
Okay, so here's the joke I made tonight at the store.
All right.
From this point forward, they are not allowed in any other non-saga, quote unquote, film or Star Wars canon piece that's not saga to put a scroll in it. If they do, either that movie or this movie immediately loses a star in my book. And the reason I say that is you have now made it canon by this film that one of the non 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 can't have a scroll. You have drawn a line in the sand at this point, because if you come out with a video game tomorrow and it has a scroll in it, nope, it's not saga. That means the video game is losing points in my book.
Yeah,
and
no,
the reason
I
I
agree.
say that is because everything in the Star Wars universe, it's like one of the iconic pieces of the universe, from Knights of the Old Republic up to, Force Awakens, to every single piece of this stuff has it. You know, it's like, and they made a distinct choice to not put it in this film.
But I think they realize that, and I think that you're absolutely right, and they're going to follow through with it. I don't think that's
I'm looking forward to the young Han Solo movie
okay with it.
one.
Right.
Yeah.
Han Solo movie will not
Is
have one.
Is anyone else worried about that movie, by the way?
No.
Young
No,
Han
I'm
Solo?
not.
You don't think that might backfire?
I don't want to think about it right now. I just want to live in Rogue One.
Well, the bar is exceedingly high at this point, because I enjoyed 7 for what it was. Rogue One topped the list for me. That's a very high bar that 8 is going to now have to somehow get there.
I
right,
hate to say it.
It's like 8's going to have to get there. Wait a minute, 8's not as good as a non-saga film? How is this possible? Because I mean,
it won't be. 8 only has to follow 7. It's not going to even be remotely. It's again, it's a different animal completely.
Right, but I guess my point in this is, Disney has said specifically that everything that's come before that's non-saga is not canon. It's all legends, right? Until we make it real. Okay, so that means they are supposedly intimately involved in every decision that's being made on these movies and comic books and everything else, right?
Yeah. Right.
So that means either somebody at Disney, came in, or somebody on the movie convinced Disney, we shouldn't have a scroll here. It needs to be kept just to the canon. And if they made that as their kind of, doctrine going forward, I'm perfectly okay with it. But in this film, and if it becomes the first of many that does this, then I'll just get over it because I did like the movie. If the Han Solo movie has a scroll, I'm going to be pissed at Han Solo.
I'm going to double down.
I'm losing a star.
I'm going to double down, and I'm going to call it right now. I think they're smart enough. I got faith in them. They're not going to have a scroll in that movie. You heard it here first.
Han Solo. What's after 9?
There's not one planned, but there will be, because Rogue One was such a darn big success. I really hope there's going to be one extra.
Rogue 0.5.
Well, I don't even want it to
There's
be
other
Rogue.
stories you could tell.
Yeah, Rogue is.
Oh no, there's plenty of other stories.
Let's go into like Admiral Thrawn or something. Cool. Let's.
I'm all in for
Boba
Thrawn.
Fett. I would watch a movie about Boba Fett.
Oh,
By the way,
I want an HBO or AMC series for
Yes.
Boba Fett.
Yeah, I agree.
Through the movie, I want an ongoing 12 episodes a year series for Boba Fett. I need more.
I'm with you.
Boba Fett, the young years, the early years.
There was somebody who said that it was young Luke Skywalker. That's
Dude,
on the horizon. I'm like, please no.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that on the Han Solo movie, I'll bet you anything that Han Solo and Boba Fett have an interaction, and I bet it's a friendly one, almost like casual. I'm willing to bet.
Over coffee at the local.
Yeah, like something like before he was hunting. It's almost like a oh yeah, we're buddies, but just so you know, if I ever had to, if someone paid me to get you, I would get you. I would freeze your ass in a block of carbonate, just so you know, buddy.
Oh, you old kidder, you.
Yeah, exactly. I am almost going to guarantee it, but we'll see what happens.
I think they're actually going to reverse that decision, and they're going to add the scroll, and then they're going to, on the director's cut for Rogue One, they'll go back and add a scroll feature.
Very cute.
I think they will. That's my opinion.
I wouldn't be shocked if the rewrites, and they had to be heavy rewrites to the ending of this. If you look into all the backstory, which I did after watching it, for example, the lady that I cannot think of her name, the main character lady, she has in her clause for another movie, right? So you're like, wait a minute, how is that? Okay. Why would they put in her contract that she has, the ability to be in another Star Wars movie, unless at least the first few drafts and the first shots, they weren't really sure they're going to kill everybody.
You can put anyone in a Star Wars movie again. You just put a mask on them and they're an alien. Easy.
So there's ways around it, obviously, but when you look at the trailer footage versus what actually happened, it's obvious there were some serious rewrites.
Either serious rewrites or just alternate. I agree with you. I do agree, but I'm saying the whole thing about the trailer being different is that might have been just secondary tape. They might have had a couple of good ideas, and then they're like, you know what? This is the best one. Let's go with this. So I'm just glad they showed us all those other things because that just kept the mystery. That kept the excitement. Yeah. Like, whoa.
Oh yeah, I just like how much it screwed over the people who studied it.
Love it. Oh, smug.
All right,
smug.
Okay, we're getting late. I should stop jabbering. Jake and I should probably just keep going until next week. It's like, episode 2, Jake and J-Bot. Continue to discuss.
Well, we could call it J-Bot's oil bath behind closed door.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. All right, guys. So I think it was a good episode. I had fun with it. Though I'm sorry, I got distracted looking something up on Rogue One, and I missed the whole Biston came back at it. But it was good. I had fun. It was a great movie. I think it's one of the best Star Wars movies ever.
I 100% agree with you.
Yes. Jake, you might be being promoted.
Yeah, yes. I'm on board with that too.
All right,
much as I complain, that's just my job. I mean, come on.
Yep.
Excellent.
Well, thanks for joining us, everyone.
Take us away, Jake. I'll give it to you.
All right. Engaging hyperspace in 3, 2, 1.
Okay.
All right. Excellent.